Next gen's going to be expensive, boys. Hello and welcome to Triangle Square, the PlayStation Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as always, is Mr. Chris Figs. Chris, how you doing today?
Oh, just dandy. How are you, man?
Doing okay. This is the one time where I feel like we've started recording so closely after getting into this chat that I literally have not had a chance to talk to you at all.
Yeah, it was a little weird. No foreplay. I've just straight dry podcasting.
Yeah, well, they make lube for a reason, Chris. So here we are.
Well, you didn't put any on, so.
Well, I thought I did. But you know what? That's okay, because what we can do is lubricate this conversation by starting off the way that we always start off. But right before we get there, quickly shout out that this is, of course, a PlayStation podcast, but we look at gaming just really through the lens of being PlayStation fans. We play whatever, whenever, however. One of Chris's big games for that he's going to talk about and has been kind of tooting its horn is Avowed, which we all know to be a Xbox/PC game. So
for now,
we play wherever, whenever. For now. So yeah, if that sounds like something you're interested in, you want to join us. Today we're going to be talking, I wouldn't say that the news is just necessarily on fire. There's some talk about a Death Stranding 2 movie. We kind of have some names attached to it finally. Helldivers 2, got some information coming up. But I think the big thing here has been and I think this makes sense why no one else has necessarily done much. We finally learned about the Switch 2. And really where that comes into conversation here, I think, is going to be where its price conversation comes in and all the controversy, one way or the other, depending on how you are, about what to expect from the future of games as a whole, based off of what Nintendo themselves are willing to do. So, Chris, let's go ahead and jump into what you've been playing, because you have a pretty hefty list this week. You've been a little more subdued lately. You've been a little more focused on one game, but this looks like a classic Chris games list.
Yeah, in a way.
So,
in a way.
I'm gonna lob it off to you. Do you want to save Avowed? I don't know how much you plan on talking, but I know you have a couple of bangers here. You have State of Decay 2, which is one of your favorite games, and a couple of them here. One of them I saw you re-download, and I thought this is interesting. So, what do you want to start with? I mean, you want to start with Avowed, or I'll kind of let you choose. Pick your poison.
I mean, I think I have the least to say about. Let's just start quick. I downloaded The Last of Us Part 1.
That was the one where I saw it hit my phone for whatever reason, because I'm still getting notifications for what you download for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's okay though; it doesn't bother me. It's just always interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, no, So no free ads here, but one of the podcasts that I listen to just released an over 7 hour podcast about The Last of Us Part 2. And I was listening to that. Yeah, it's a long podcast. I was listening to that and I was like, I kind of want to play. You're kind of making me want to play The Last of Us again. So I played The Last of Us Part 2 twice, and I'm like, I haven't played The Last of Us Part 1 in a long time. So I downloaded that, and I'm not terribly far, which is why I don't have a ton to say, but I think I just got through like the bombing at the checkpoint, and I'm like still with Tess. So like I'm very early, but I am playing that. I'm enjoying it. Honestly, the only reason I stopped is for another game on the list, which is Super Hot. I was like, I might as well finish this platinum before the show tomorrow. So I did do that. And we'll talk more about that because I have some things to say, positive and negative, about that game. But The Last was just really good. Talking about it reminded me, them talking about it was like, okay, these games are cool. And I did want to go back into it because I never did play Part 1. I was excited for it and then just kind of never went through it. So.
Yeah, and just for anyone who's curious, I mean, he's of course played the original The Last of Us.
Yeah, I've beaten The Last
but whenever Part 1, the remaster / remake that they came out with for PS5 came out, he was super into it, was like, are you going to buy it? And I bought it, and then I played it, and I didn't even think I would anytime soon.
Yeah.
And I played it before Chris did. So, yeah, coming back around to that, I do think it's a really well remake. And it's funny because one of the games on my list, I guess we can go ahead and hop over into that once we're done here, is also a remaster with some pretty high level changes to the way that they produce the game. And I think The Last of Us is a really interesting example because part one feels like a remaster in the same vein as what Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered was. And I just think it's really interesting that they seem to not really land on a consistent level of what they call these things.
Yeah.
And what I mean there is like, there's some stuff in The Last of Us Part 1 that I'd say The Last of Us Part 2 is still doing a little bit more of. It doesn't feel like a ground up remake, even if it is, and it might be. It feels like they took the skeleton of the other game and just completely redid the visual pipeline into it. And it does look really good, but there's a lot of times where I'm like, some of the things that 2 brought in, I would have kind of liked to have seen backdrift, but at the same time, there is something to be said about having a new way to play the game that looks better, but mostly keeps the original gameplay intact, just so when you jump from part 1 to part 2, you still have that appreciation of, oh, this is a sequel. They've improved a lot.
Yeah.
You can see what is improved. And whenever you backport features and ideas and mechanics back, it's great and it can make the first game fun. But for people who are new to the series, I kind of feel like playing 1 and then going into 2 might feel a little too flat. And I bring that up because I know a lot of people who fell off of the Uncharted collection that Blue Point did on PS4 because they did kind of backport some of the features. And it was just like playing all 3 of those in a row for some people was just like, it's too much. And I think that it was, I did play all 3 of them in a row, but I remember feeling like these feel way closer than they did. And they're already pretty similar games. So in a row, I could see burnout happening by the time you reach 3 pretty easily.
Me too. Because that's why I never beat part 3 until like last year when I finally got the platinum in 3. So yeah, it's been, I don't know. Like I said, like I've always maintained that I don't think that if you're remaking something, you should change it. So I'm fine with them not making any additions to it. Like it's just, I'm happy with just a better looking The Last of Us. That's what I signed up for, you know? So that's what I'm okay with. I don't need Prone, you know, like it's cool. And The Last of Us Part 2 definitely is one of the best games I've ever played in terms of gameplay. So yeah, there's an argument of like, would The Last of Us Part 1 be more fun that way? But who knows? I mean, you're playing as Joel in this one, so it's a different person, you know? So there's some stuff that The Last of Us Part 2 does that I'm kind of okay with not being back in 1. I wish they'd taught Ellie to swim. That might have been fine, and push cart crates and stuff better, but that's about it. So far, like I said, I don't have a ton to say. I'm going back into The Last of Us and I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I think one of the things that going back to part 1 after having played part 2 and not playing even the remaster of 1 from PS4 in the in-between time, I was like, wow, even though kind of the vibe that you get between the 2 games is very similar, when you're actually playing them even remotely close to each other, they are approaching game design in very different ways. And I like them both for very different reasons. There is something very pacing in part 1 in the original is excellent. And pacing in 2 suffers.
Bad.
And a lot of that's because of the structural setup they chose to go with. And there is some good payoff and some downsides because of that structured choice. I get where they were going. We talked about that plenty, but it's kind of nice. There's something about playing The Last of Us Part 1 again whenever I did, where I was like, man, dude, just like a 15-hour really good campaign. It's kind of like I said whenever I played Immortals of Avium recently. It's just, there is something to be said about a well-crafted 15-hour. Now, of course, The Last of Us Part 1, I think, is a a better example of that than Immortals of Avium. But there's just something about that kind of time slot for a game that still feels really good, regardless of how much time you have the game or not. It just feels like the pacing, the mechanic ideas, it feels like everything gets time to breathe without ever anything becoming too old too quickly. Like outstaying its welcome, but also you get just enough room for everything that gets introduced to feel like you get to explore it, both thematically in the story with characters and all that, but then also gameplay ideas. So that's cool. I'm glad you're back to playing it. I'll be curious to talk to you more about it once you get further into it.
Definitely.
But it's the same old game you love. So
it's, The Last of Us Part 1 is a classic. So, yeah. So you've also been playing a remake, yeah?
Sort of. This is like where I think it's weird. The Last of Us Part 1 doesn't actually have a tag anywhere, right? They don't call it a remake or remaster or anything. They just renamed it Part 1 since they chose to use the Part 2 moniker for the second game. And I think that is probably good, but it's interesting because they call Horizon Zero Dawn remastered specifically, but in many ways, it's more akin to what The Last of Us Part 1 is than a real remaster, even more so than something that, at least from what we can see, from what we're seeing from the upcoming Days Gone remastered, where that game looks like they literally did just kind of scale everything up to where it's actually native 4K and all these different things give it some pro support. But at the end of the day, it is more along the lines of a traditional remaster. Higher frame rate, higher resolution, maybe some more bug fixes, though that game was in pretty solid shape by the time PS5 released anyway, bug-wise. So yeah, going back to Horizon Zero Dawn, it's kind of similar in that visually it is a huge step up in a lot of ways, but it's still not quite Forbidden West. You can tell that they just kind of pushed the original engine version that was of Decima to its max and kind of backported things visual feature set wise that they could, but some things like water and all those things still didn't happen. There's no swimming, even though there was swimming in Forbidden West. But again, I don't mind all that. And a lot of what I've talked about when playing Forbidden West originally, there's a couple of gameplay limitation choices that they added in Forbidden West that were not in the original game that I enjoyed having back suddenly. And so it was really cool coming back to it. And now that I've kind of had this, I'll go ahead and throw it out there. I played Horizon Zero Dawn remastered so that I could just replay a game I haven't beaten since the original release in 2017. I tried playing it again whenever they did the PS5 patch that came out in 2020. And I just, it was too soon. And I was kind of like, I'm not interested enough to play this right now. So now I was back and I was like, okay, I'm having fun. This is a good time. But I played that so that I could continue to go through my play more DLC thing that I've been working on this year. So the idea was finally play the Frozen Wilds. And so Zero Dawn is a really good game. And being able to back up into Forbidden West. And I also played Burning Shores, which I just beat, I'm pretty sure. I've got one like talk to cutscene to do to finish it out, but I've done the climactic big point. I'm just in that little bit of resolution. And looking at the series as a package, Forbidden West, graphically, you forget how great that game looks. And it having this pro update, it's even crazier. It's very solid. And there are some really nice gameplay additions. The melee combat is a lot better. Being able to fly and having the glider and a lot of the tools are more interesting. But I really think I've hammered in on why I think Zero Dawn is just a more compelling game. And I think for me, at the end of the day, it's an example of the story and the pacing for the actual main story. I don't think the side content matters as much here. Zero Dawn is engrossing and mystifying, and the mystery that you are learning alongside Aloy is so great. And it's one of these examples of storytelling where the downside to a sequel where you learn all these things is that you can't have that in the sequel. So inherently the mystery is just lessened in the second game, and they have to pivot a bunch of ways. So I think Zero Dawn is a really great story. And then I think Forbidden West tries to be much more epic, and I think it is good all the same for it. But I think that it's similar to The Last of Us Part 2. Pacing and a couple of choices, I think, ultimately make me view the first game in a better light as a package than the second game, but there's still a ton to love about the second game. So I'm gonna, instead of focusing on the game so much, I am going to focus on what I've never played, which was Frozen Wilds and Burning Shores. Frozen Wilds and Burning Shores were both a lot shorter than I thought they'd be, but I don't play a lot of DLC, so I didn't have a good frame of reference.
Yeah, they're usually pretty short.
But they're interesting playing them afterwards, because I could see some of what Frozen Wilds was trying to do to prep for the sequel. Like, they put way more emphasis on mocapping, body language, and of course, in Remastered, all that's actually fixed in the main game. They did voice acting and mocap so that you don't have the dead stares that the original game had while they were talking to you.
Is creepy baby Aloy still in the game?
Yeah, she is. And she still looks weird, man. It's an improved model, but there's just no way around it. She looks odd. Children in video games just seldom look good. I don't know what it is.
That's why I love, not to derail a little bit, but I love in Cyberpunk that if you look at the children, they're just small. They're just shrunk down models of the adults. It's so funny.
So good. So yeah, Frozen Wilds and Burning Shores both being shorter was a bit surprising to me. But I also want to throw out there that I was worried about playing the main stories. I did a little bit of the side content in both of these, but very little, because I don't think that they're that interesting, and that's not really what I go to those games for. So know that everything I'm about to say about these is through the lens of just mainlining the main story that really matters. And with that said, I was able to beat Frozen Wilds in one night, and I was able to beat Burning Shores in essentially the same amount of hours, but spread across yesterday, last night, and today. So I don't think it's a bad thing. The only downside is that both of these DLCs try to push you into having a strong connection with a character that the runtime cannot reinforce. And so it's really interesting playing through these stories and having these interactions, because I do think that they're well written, they're well acted. I mean, they're pretty fun. They introduce new gameplay ideas. So all that's cool. It does what DLC usually does, which is something I'll comment on in a second. But Burning Shores is a really particular example of feeling like, I think one of the weakest parts of Forbidden West is the ending. I don't think it's awful, but man, playing Burning Shores and getting this crazy climactic fight that they've been teasing this entire series and getting it in DLC feels crazy.
Really?
Insane. Now, the DLC story is pretty good. They've got Sam Witwer, my man, always good, coming back as a new character. Yeah. So that was great, and I was glad to see him in. And I think that he made a good villain, and what they were doing with it. It's really cool, but it feels weird from a storytelling and even a gameplay perspective. It feels almost like they always intended to make Burning Shores in terms of like from the get-go, and that it was their solve for not having something that I think everyone thought the second game was building to, which was fighting a metal devil eventually, right? The Horus. I think putting that in the DLC was such a wild move. But there's one other thing, without spoiling too much. They finally decide to make Aloy have romance adjacent things and talks and nervousness and all these things. And of course, this is just one of those things where in that day and age, feels like every main character in a game, as a girl from Sony games for sure, ends up being lesbian. Or at the very least, non-traditional, which I think is very interesting. So it's the same problem I talked about, where they're trying to force this connection between you and this other character, and you're an hour into playing this DLC, and an hour in game time has passed. Like, that's it. It's not like the game had like a time jump and I'm supposed to be like, oh, well, they got to know each other in between. No, I've known this person for an hour, and I'm so upset about, I hope they didn't take that the wrong way. I'm so worried. What if I never get to see them again? What if I never talk to them again? Oh, and I'm just like, oh God, this is very over the head. It's a bit much. And I actually kind of liked seeing Aloy have those feelings. I just wish that the DLC had given that room to breathe, or that they just would have sowed the seeds only here and then started to actually pick that up with Aloy really being like, maybe I like this person, maybe I like this girl, and exploring that in the next game. So it's weird, but dude, final boss fight, sick. DLC. Yeah. I think what I've learned about DLC from my time here is that I like it most when DLC shake things up by making you play as someone else. I don't know how to describe that much more, but Frozen Wilds and Burning Shores do ultimately feel like more of the same. And I think most people who want DLC want that. But since the way I play games is to play the shit out of them for the most part, platinum and be done with them, these DLCs are not necessarily as big of a pull for me to come back in. But the DLCs that I often love and remember are ones like Dishonored, Death of the Outsider. Great game. And technically it's a standalone DLC, but still a great game. And Dishonored's first game had DLC where you got to play as a separate character with separate powers and separate story motivations. And I think that they're more interesting because they have more of a, we're shaking everything up. There's characters that you don't know. There's lore that you're getting here that you weren't. And it's almost like it's adding on to the initial game by way of divergent storytelling elsewhere, whereas these always feel weirdly tacked on. Frozen Wilds feels weird as shit to play because it feels like they just wrote a story and tried shoving it in and pretending that it was always happened before the finale of the first game. Burning Shores is better in that it takes place after the end of the game.
Yeah.
And so therefore they can think about the weight of the story decisions that happened in the game. But
that's why
I'd say I'm not sold on DLC. I think I need specific types of DLC to be more interested in them.
Yeah. I mean, again, I guess it depends on the motivation of what you're looking for. I feel like this is a expand on the story, but at the same time, like I feel like these can't have too many story implications because then you're like, you know, like you're doing like an Asura's Wrath where you have to pay for the ending. You know, and so like how pivotal can you really make the story of Burning Shores if, you know, you assume 10 million people play that, and that's a lot, but you know, that game sold 24 million copies or something around there. So, you know, how do you add story content without pissing off the people who already bought the game and finished it and don't want to play DLC and then have to now struggle with, I didn't play this, so is this important? Do I need to go back and look? Do I have to go watch a YouTube video? Do I have to go play this game? So it's interesting. That's why I like something like Resident Evil 4, the DLC that it has. I haven't played it yet, but I plan to, is just what Ada's doing the whole time, you know? And I think that's cool.
That's what I'm saying. I love that because it can touch on the main story and give you new context, which is interesting, but it doesn't take away from your ability to understand what's coming in the future. But at the same time, it just feels like, oh, cool. This is just, it's a character story. I get to go and see what these characters are. And at least in the case of like Dishonored, it really is something that it's great storytelling that you only care about if you start it and because you start to learn about these characters. But if you miss out as a main player, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change what they're going to be doing in the sequel, where somebody who had finished the game and moved on would be more likely to jump on and continue.
Yeah.
It's great little side stories. So yeah, I think character sub-studies like this are really cool. And I think that when Hollow Knight was doing it with Silksong before it was supposed to be its own game, it was supposed to be DLC. And I thought that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. And like even Left Behind, where it's like, this is non-essential character building stuff, you know? And I like that a lot too. So.
And I like that DLC a lot. A lot more than DLC. I thought I would, interestingly. So yeah, I mean, of the DLC I've played so far, I really enjoyed the Sonic one because the Sonic one was suddenly you playing as Knuckles, Tails, and Amy, which means that you were playing the game in different ways, which again felt like, even though they shoehorned it in, well, they kind of did. It was like, oh, this alternate route always existed, but you just didn't get to do it until the DLC was ready to release. But it was fun because it put you in the shoes of other characters, and it was kind of the same thing. What were those characters doing while you were doing the finale events?
Yeah.
Now I get to see, and they get to be part of the finale in a way that was implied but never really shown. So, yeah, I don't begrudge them for doing this, and I think that there's a lot of pressure to do DLCs, both from a market standpoint, being able to put something out and make some money without having to go full sequel route. And of course, big games like The Witcher 3, and from what I hear, it's excellent DLC, which I'm a little worried about because I wonder, is it just more of the same as well, or is it more along the lines of separate stories? I don't claim to know. So it's interesting, but I don't really regret my decision to do this. It's just knowing the little bit that I know about like the God of War Ragnarok DLC, which was something I was curious to also try because it's free. It's even better for that. But I kind of know, and I kind of feel like it's going to be the same. Like I'm just going to jump into it. I'm like, oh, it's just more Ragnarok, which is not a bad thing.
Well, it's
Ragnarok's
not
a solid
even,
game.
It's not even like story DLC, right? It's just a roguelike mode. So.
No, there is story driven aspects to it that I don't even think I'd consider it a big deal. Essentially what happens is Kratos ends up encountering his old self and having this character closure moment where he speaks to him. His old self doesn't speak to him, but he speaks to his old self and is like, you were cruel and chaotic, but you don't have to be those things or whatever. And it's like, and I'm not making fun of it. I think that could be a really good story moment, but I had to kind of go back and ask, with the way that Ragnarok, the way I view it, Ragnarok fucking sat on its ass and then tried finishing the game with all these crazy story events happening in like 2 or 3 hours. And it's like, you couldn't have put this shit in the main game. And maybe we have a reason to feel like Kratos is having this moment of reflection and turnaround. Instead, we hurry up and wait. That is exactly what Ragnarok's problems felt like. Is it felt like, hurry up. Okay, wait. And then at the very end, hurry, God damn it, hurry. And then it felt like they didn't have time at the end with how much they were hurrying to actually resolve any of the things I wanted to feel resolved in a way that felt actually like it took context of everything around it. It just felt like it suddenly ended and they tried to wrap what they could up with the time that they had. And I know other people don't feel that way. And sequels are hard. But, Burning Shores, or rather Horizon Forbidden West, one of the reasons I think I've grown a little bit soft on some of my complaints on it, it's clearly the middle story of a 3-part story. And those always tend to be slightly problematic with pacing because you have to set a bunch of stuff up that you're going to resolve in the third one. The weird thing about God of War is that I always thought it was going to be the second game of a third. And then they just were like, no, this is the last game. And so you're playing it and you're like, wow, there sure is a lot of hurry up and wait. And then at the end, it's just like, bam, 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 bam. And you're like, fuck, maybe we could have used the third game. But yeah, so talk to me real quick. I don't know that you have a whole lot to say about it. If you're willing to jump into it next, you hit me up and told me that you had gotten convinced by Sean to pick up the Path of Exile 2 beta. That surprised me a little bit because that doesn't scream to me your type of game.
It's not.
That's what I was going to ask. So how much did you play before you kind of had that realization?
I'm like level 7. So I played like about an hour or two. No, more than that. Like 2 solid sessions. And it's not even that I dislike it. I just don't care.
Well, and that's kind of what I mean is like, this seems like the type of game though. And honestly, for me, the same way, because at least from what I've seen, I don't think Path of Exile worries much about its story. It's very much, do you like this type of gameplay loop? Do you like the Diablo type of gameplay loop? Here is it endlessly.
Yeah. And
Diablo already does that. But I kind of like Diablo because of a mix of that and the world and the characters and the really cool cutscenes and the crazy lore implications. All that's great. And I'm not saying Path of Exile doesn't have it at all, but I think Diablo 4 even had a really cool story and I enjoyed playing it. But somehow, some way, Diablo 4 didn't keep its hooks at me like Diablo 3 did. I've changed, Diablo's changed. There's many reasons why that may be, but Path of Exile's never really screamed to me. It seems like a forever game that people want you to hop on and only play that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Even when I did it, I knew that I wasn't into it. Like, I'm talking to him and I'm like, I could get this for free. I have the points. And like, he's like, he really likes it. My friends all play it. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, do you actually think this is a game for me? And of course, yeah, of course, yeah, you're gonna love it. And then I played like 2 sessions, and I'm like, I don't dislike this game, but like I just don't give a shit. Like I just don't
it's
care.
the balance,
And
right? Of a game doesn't have to be bad for you to just not be interested. Like
Yeah.
there are games where I've been playing them and I'm like, I can't call this game bad. I just don't give a shit about what this game's doing.
Yeah, and I think the problem with it is that like it's engaging, like, but those types of games, like, I don't know how to explain it, I guess, but like it is engaging, it's challenging, there's a lot of, it's hard, but it's also not engaging, and I don't know how to really put that, but like there's just something about like, oh, I'm holding R1 and then I've pressed left to heal, and then I'm holding R1, oh, I dodged, and then I'm holding R1, and I dodged again, and I'm holding R1, and it's like, it's not fun. And I think, and here's the thing, and I think I would have more fun with this game multiplayer, but I don't want to get backseated the whole time, so I won't play it with them right now.
Which is funny. The only way that I think you could have fun with it being multiplayer is if I hopped in and started playing with you, and it's 2 new people experiencing this at the same time and kind of being like because I mean, I know that we didn't, because it's just that I haven't had as much time, but I felt like that's what was going on when we were playing V Rising. I was like, okay, we're both kind of learning, we're figuring out what's going on, we're having fun, and I enjoyed V Rising. I've not deleted it because I do have a part of me that's like, I kind of want to see if me and Chris can go back to this soon.
I'd like to play more of it, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, that's and V Rising is honestly a similar type game, just more survival focused in its gameplay loop, but still similar in terms of how it views like gear and loot.
Yeah, it was just like I knew after the first day when I was being told what to bind stuff to, but I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want you to tell me that this should be on X. Like, I don't want that much. A backseating. So like they invited me to their Discord, and I straight up said, I'm like, I'm not playing multiplayer until I get through single player on my own, and I don't want to play single player. So it's just one of these things where it's like I get these texts occasionally like, oh, I just did this, you'll really like this, and blah blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, cool, no. I'm good.
Well, and I think like, if you really look at it, I think it's because you and Sean had that kind of, Sean got that type of gameplay commitment from you in a game that you really were committed to in that way in Apex. And so I think he sees that you have the ability to do that, but I think you're more aware that for the most part, Apex was an exception to that being the type of gamer you are. You've never struck me as, I don't know what to call this. I don't mean this in a bad way, but people are like, oh, they're a sweat, which is like, like they hyperfixate so much on the game that they know everything, and they're all trying to tell you this is max.
Well, that's exactly it.
Let me min max the way for you to play it, so I can tell you the most efficient way to play it. And that's why I think people who like those types of games are very driven to MMO style games and forever games, because you want something that you can master over thousands of hours.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I don't berate that. I don't belittle that at all. There are games I have played a lot of hours on, and a lot of them do have the ability for you to feel that constant, like I'm getting somewhere. But that's just 99.9% not the games I'm looking for, not the type of gamer that I am. I can have little moments where I'm like, oh, I'm really into this. But even then, it's like, I look at my Destiny 2 numbers being like 500 or 600 hours or whatever they are, and that's rookie numbers.
Yeah.
For Destiny 2, if we're being real. And that's so much game to me. I can't believe I played that. And it's also a big part of why I struggle to go back to it, because I've put 500 hours in it, and I don't like doing that with games. I've played Skyrim like 7 times, and I've not played Skyrim 500 hours.
Yeah. It's, and that's I think one of the things I said to him. I'm like, I don't like Destiny raids with you guys because I don't want to use the guns you want me to use. I don't want to use a fucking fusion rifle. Like, I don't care. I like I don't remember what the gun is, but Graviton Lance. I like the Graviton Lance.
Graviton Lance is sick, yeah.
If I'm going to play Destiny, I'm going to use the Graviton Lance. And you're telling me...
Sunshot was sick. I fucking love that gun. It very quickly became something that you wouldn't use, but fuck it, I like it.
Yeah, I want to use it. And it's like, okay, well, you have to go in with... It's like, and again, this isn't disparaging, because like I know that all of my friends do it, and they're doing it to like help me. But it's like I'll let him just take over my screen, and he'll build the whole build the way that they need it for the raid. But then I'm doing the raid, and I'm like, I'm not having fun with this gun. Like, I'm just not enjoying my time here. And part of it is that I don't want to play Destiny. So you hit me up to play Destiny to help you guys out with a raid. And I'm like, I'm doing this because we're friends and I love you guys, but I want to kill myself. And
yeah.
You know,
and I think
and
that's one of those things for all these types of games, including Path of Exile, including all those things. I think it's playing with someone like Sean. And again, I think there's shades of this because I've done it to you at a much lower level, but with some of the survival games like we've talked about, right? But I think a lot of it is that you don't get to experience the playing around and finding out that this is the best combo for yourself.
Yeah.
You're getting told it is. And so the shortcutting there, I think that for me and you, the fun is figuring out the best way for you. And usually the best way for you will include some version of the best way for most players anyway. Maybe little changes, but you like to feel like you got there. And when someone just tells you what it is because they think the fun is in pulling it off, which I'm not saying can't be fun, but that's just, I don't think that's the fun we prioritize.
No. And it's like, so that was where I was at with Path, where I'm like, I'm just not like, I'll maybe hop in Discord occasionally, but like, I'm not letting you backseat it. And then it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, I don't want to play though. like I I'm in it and like, oh, I did it. And it's like, I just don't. And like, yeah, okay. Like, I get it. Like, I didn't play Diablo very much either. Like it's not, that's not my specific type of game. Cause it's just big damage, kill thing, move on and get the best piece of armor. And it's like, I just don't care. Like, I don't care about the 0.01% health increase per second every time I kill an enemy bonus that I get from this pair of shoes. Like, I don't does the pair of shoes look sick? I care about that way more. That's like when we played Monster Hunter, which, spoiler alert, I'm also not particularly interested in playing anymore.
Oh, dude, I hope that I don't think you care, but I have stopped asking you because after last episode, I was like, oh, Chris, I had fooled myself a little bit into thinking Chris might actually like the game, but he didn't like it that much. So I asked you one time out of hey, I'm pretty sure you're probably not going to want to, but just so you know, I did tell you that I would only play with you within reason, and you were like, nah. Dude,
I was like,
I don't care.
There's a baseball game on. That's what I'm going to do, and
which respect. I prefer that about you too, because if you just don't want to do it, you'll usually just say like no, but you'll always say like I will if you need me to, but no. It's and I do the same thing. It's why I played Red Dead Online with y'all. I don't give a shit about playing Red Dead Online. I don't want to play that at all. I have no interest in that at all.
Exactly. But like we had a good time because you're hanging out with your boys, which is like half of why I'll download Destiny, Like, I don't know if I told the story on here, but there was one time, and I love this story. There was one time that they texted me, like, we desperately need a 6. There's no one, we have no one else. And so I download the game and I get in and I forget that we're not in party chat. This is a big thing to remember. I forgot that we're not in a party because some of them are PC players. So I get into Destiny 2 and I go, hey. And the first thing they go is, oh, we just finished it. And I immediately close the game. And
I think you have told that because I was like, that's fucking funny.
So I went from talking to them to just out of party chat and not speaking anymore. Again, it wasn't me being rude. I forgot that we weren't talking to each other in party, but I didn't play that for myself. So it's like, it's one of the things like I'd wrap up and, with just that, like, none of what I'm saying is like a negative on any of my friends. It's not a negative on you when we play these games. It's just like, I understand that, okay, you're trying to help me. You're trying to get me to a place that is going to make me more powerful, but I don't want that, like, and if I want it, I'll ask you. Like, I have no problem going to Sean, like, what do you think of my stats? Like, I'll send him my stat screen. I did it in, Lies of P. I've done it in Dark Souls. I've done it in this, but like, I play more video games than probably all of my friends combined. Like, I don't need to be taught how to shoot. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I think just to butt in on that for a second, I think what it is, like I said, is I think all of us, any of the times that this has happened with anybody, I think it's usually under a well-intended
Yeah, it's not malicious.
I want you to show me. I want to show you my fun, and I'm trying to shortcut you there.
You're right.
But that assumes that you have fun for the same reasons as I do. And I think by paying attention more to myself, I figured out ways in which I need to approach other people. That's why with survival games, I started thinking like, oh, if I'm playing a survival game, the fun of the survival game is figuring the shit out. I don't, like, no, that doesn't mean that if I hit a point where I'm just genuinely confused, I won't go on Google and be like, hey, what am I supposed to do next?
Yeah.
But it's like, that's all I look at. And then I just keep going because I'm like, I just need a nudge to get me going in the right direction. And then I'll still want to have that feeling of, dude, I cut this down and I went to figure out what I could craft, and look at this shit. I made water shoes. It's just like, okay, this is cool. So yeah, I'm not surprised Path of Exile 2 didn't hit for you, but I don't think I actually specifically responded to you telling me you got that. No, I don't have any interest in it either. So
yeah, I wasn't sure because I knew you were a Diablo guy. So I'm like, this is way more up his alley than mine.
But I'm not a Diablo guy like most Diablo people are. And realistically, where I was a Diablo guy was when they had seasons running, and the fun that I'm talking about was there. I would do the seasonal content and eventually get some of the seasonal builds, like some of the seasonal armor, which has specific things that you can craft to build around. And the fun was figuring out the best way to have this new set of armor with a new thing to consider and how you wanted to build the rest of your build around it so that you could just pull off crazy shit. And that is the fun of Diablo. And it's probably more there now after launch. Because I played Diablo 3 at launch, and then I played it again on PC about a year later when the DLC came out. But I didn't play hundreds of hours of Diablo until it came out on PS4, and it was already out for a couple of years, and they were a few seasons deep. And then I got super in the loop and was playing with every character and super into it. And it was one of those games where I wasn't doing that to platinum it, but I was already doing that, and I was like, I might as well platinum it.
Yeah.
And so that was fun, but Diablo 4 didn't pull me that way. So I'm not one of those people who immediately goes, Diablo 4 is coming. Guess who's about to be playing 10,000 hours of Diablo 4? No, I played 60, beat it.
Right. Finish it up. Good. We're good. And that's the thing. It's like, even with Path, as dumb as this sounds to some people who listen, but like, there's no trophies in Path. So I can't even like bullshit myself into it. It's just one of these things where like I'm playing it and I'm like, I don't want to play this. And it's one of these things that like more recently than ever, I don't need that to play a game. The game I put the most hours into in the past 2 weeks is State of Decay 2, which I've already finished. I already have all the achievements, and I've just put 20 hours this week playing State of Decay 2 because it's fucking fun. So it's not a situation where like I need the platinum trophy or I cannot play. It's just like I don't care about Path, and if there was at least a platinum at the end of the hook, I could bullshit myself into being like, fuck it, I'll do this and play with my friends because at least by the end I'll have some trophies or a platinum. But that's not there, so I just have even less motivation, and
so you kind of scooched over to State of Decay 2, which I think is interesting because it's a game I've never played much, but I think it's sort of a survival zombie game all the same, yeah?
Kind of. It's not... it's a survival game, but I wouldn't put it in the same category as the ones that I've seen you enjoy. There's no like, you don't punch trees to get wood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like resource collecting looks a lot different.
Yeah. It's one that I think you like, and it's actually, after I asked you, I almost bought it for you because I wanted to play it with you so bad, but I'm like, whatever.
You don't have to do that. No, I actually have interest.
No, it was just I knew it would put 10 times more pressure on you to play it with me. So I was like, okay, I'll buy it for him. And then I looked at the price and I'm like, he can fucking figure it out himself. I already own it.
But that's actually, I was going to use this as a platform for you two, because you've talked it loosely here and there about how you like State of Decay 2, but I don't think you've ever actually sold much on what the gameplay loop is. We now know who let the dogs out. The Baja men finally have their validation they've been looking for this whole time. So back to the topic at hand here. Give me a little soft pitch of State of Decay 2. Why should anyone be interested in it? What does it offer?
I think it just has a really fun loop. It's one of these things like you go out, find zombie. You're always searching for resources. So that's the big hook, is like I need this to build this facility, or I just had a situation where like all my pistols were broken and I didn't have enough stuff to fix them, so I had to go out, find all of that. You're doing these missions. You're doing missions for other groups of survivors, and there's one, I guess, minor spoilers for like a single side arc that I don't even know is technically an arc, but like there was this cool through line of this group whose whole thing is that they're making alcohol. And you do like 4 missions for these people, and then you can have interactions with your community, and they can be like, I don't think this is a good idea, and this is why. And you can just straight up be like, you know what, fuck it, you're right, we're done. But with me, I followed the missions through, and every time you do missions with this group, you go with this one person, and she's always wasted, and she always almost kills you. So 3 times you're going through this whole thing. And the third time, she gets bit, and she has the blood plague, which you can cure. That's one of the cool things here. You can go into these areas with plague hearts and get plague. You kill plague zombies. You can get plague samples and use those to build cures. So you can cure your people who are sick, who might turn, all this kind of stuff. Or you can just exile them or exterminate them. So this time she got bit and she was sick. I brought her back, and they were like, what should we do? Do you have any cure? And this was a moment for me where I'm like, we're all better off if this person dies. And I was like, I don't have a cure. You should kill her. So the arc with her ends with her faction leader taking her outside and blowing her head off. And it was one of those cool like mini stories where it's like, I saw all of this stuff happen. I know that I could help this person, but you've almost gotten me killed like 4 times. And I was just like, no, this person, you should just get rid of this person, so that's one of the things I really enjoyed. But like, it's just gameplay stuff that's fun. It's like, you have to put gas in your cars, right? So I'm doing missions with my character, and I run out of gas, and it's like, okay, now I got to find a gas station. I got to find gas in this gas station. I got to bring it back. You have inventory limits, weight limits. You can specialize these characters. So like, it's one of these things, like if me and you ever played, we would start fresh because I have a legacy pool of characters that are all maxed. So it wouldn't make sense for us to play that way. But when you first start, like you do certain actions and you build up these characters, and you can specialize, you can make these characters better, but these characters can and will die. So, if you fuck up out there, you're done. And I had one moment where I'm taking a plague heart out.
Is it permadeath?
It's permadeath. Yeah, those guys are gone. I don't know how it works in the legacy pool. I don't know if like they died in this campaign, but if I started a new one, I can get them back. I'm not sure. But like one of my legacy characters I've had since I first started the game in 2018 or whatever. And I've brought him through a bunch of campaigns. So that's kind of cool. But the big hook for me is it's just the gameplay is really fun, and it's mindless in a way that I think I like. I think there's a lot of like, okay, throw this on, throw the Red Sox game on, and I'm paying attention here, but I don't really need to. I'm just driving to this area and then I'm killing zombies. But for me, it's like, I think it's one of these things, like I could see you enjoying it and I could see you not enjoying it. I could see both, because it is a lot of what you do like, but it's a janky game. It's janky enough that you can call in a bunch of stuff on the radio. So you can call the other factions and be like, I need food. How do I get food? And it'll fucking put stuff in your area on your map that's like, okay, go search here, it might have food. Go search here, it might have food. But it's janky to the point where one of the radio calls is, are you stuck? And then you'll just sit there and it'll pop you back out right back onto the road, because like you can get, you won't be able to adjust your car and stuff like that. But like it gets pretty high level, and where I am now, it's still early. So I'm killing plague hearts, which you can open up the maps, and certain areas will have these plague hearts, which makes the areas inhospitable for outposts, for safe houses, which are different. So an outpost is like, okay, I have this outpost. Like I have one in a hospital, and that outpost generates me healing items. It generates, materials towards healing stuff. I can rest people there. I can do all of this stuff. It has defenses of its own, but like my group doesn't stay there. So one of the things I just did was I actually got a bigger area for my group. And that's really cool. I have one more plague heart to take out, and this is not like some crazy thing. You go in there and you can just melee the thing to death. But once you start hitting it, the plague heart wakes up and starts calling hordes of zombies towards you. There's special zombies, so like a lot of the gameplay is like run over all the zombies, which does damage your car, but for the most part you can get through it. And if you're playing well, you have repair kits, all this kind of stuff to fix your cars. But it'll throw wrenches in that where it's like, yeah, you can run over a whaler. You can kill, whalers just like it doesn't have any arms. It can't hurt you, but like it screams and calls zombies. But there's other ones like the boomers, which you hit a boomer, it explodes, and you have to bail out of the car or it will kill you. All the smoke and the guts or whatever will, suffocate you. And then there's frenzied zombies, which are like 28 weeks later zombies, like those, and you can't hit those with your car really, but you also can't shoot them, so it's almost like a Dark Souls boss in a way where like you have to like dodge its attack and then hit it, dodge its attack and then hit it. So the game is challenging, especially when you're first starting. We'll lose people, and we'll lose people not even on purpose. It'll just be like, oh, we're going in, we're at full health, all of a sudden we're not.
Yeah, I think from what I'm hearing, it kind of makes me think like some of these aspects I feel like are alive and well, despite not really being as focused towards that in a game like Days Gone, where I think on paper, if you would have told me like, dude, you can run out of gas for your motorcycle and your motorcycle can get damaged, I'd be like, ugh. Like if you told me that I had to patch up Roach in The Witcher 3 and feed him carrots, I'd be like, really?
Yeah.
But somehow, some way, it works really well in Days Gone. Mm-hmm. And so I could see a game more focused on that still being good. And I guess I've kind of opened myself to one of the things about zombies and why I guess they're so evergreen, specifically in gaming, is just because they're pretty ripe for mechanical variation and mechanical ideas in which you can lean pretty heavily on. Mm-hmm. They're pretty broad. I mean, there's not, you can kind of define a zombie however you need to. And it's more about the world that zombies end up. I guess the world the zombies inhabits is really what the gameplay loops are usually factored into, more so than the zombies themselves. I mean, they're definitely a part of it, but it's more about the no society, right. Nature overtaking things, and that's where a lot of the mechanics and all these things come. So I don't know. I could see myself liking it as well. I'm a little surprised it's still $40, but we'll be talking about game prices soon. So I guess we should just stop expecting to see game prices drop so soon. So much.
It's a Game Pass game, so like it's $9 technically for the month. Mm-hmm. Which honestly, for me, like I would tell you to do it that way. Strictly because, like, what if you don't like it? Like you bought Pal World and we played that one time, yep. And I feel bad about it, but I played it through Game Pass. You just made a different decision than I did. So
yeah, I mean, it's just because I continue to not really. Like I said, I don't like the idea of. I'd rather support State of Decay because that's the reason I want to. Like, if the reason I want to get Game Pass is because of one game, I'd rather support the game because that's going to do better for the actual developers. And when they look at it, they're going to go, look, these people bought it because they wanted this. The problem with Game Pass is I think it kind of obfuscates why you bought it. I know that you can look at what you played, but the thing is that I think at some point, what happens when someone plays it but they didn't buy it for that? And all they did was play it for a few hours. What does that do? Does that count as a play towards the game? Does that count as any kind of metric? How do they weight that as a success or not for the game? It's a lot easier when someone buys Game Pass and the first game they play is this, and you go, oh, cool. But also, if that person gets Game Pass for 1 month for that game, and that's all they did, and then they bounce out, it may be a success and like, look, it worked, but you made $9 off of a game that person was probably going to play anyway at that point when you could have made 40 in the case of State of Decay.
Well, that's the big argument I've heard towards, Call of Duty. Colin makes the argument all the time of like, it's better for them to sell the game because if you buy it for a month to play Call of Duty, you spent $9. If you buy it for $70 and play it for a month, you spent $70. Like, it's that same thing.
And even then, I think you're more motivated to play it more when you know you spent $70 on it.
Yeah.
If you spent $9, you'll drop it after a month and just be like, yeah, I got my month's worth.
Yeah.
But if you spent 70, you may be like, I got to keep playing this shit. And the more you play, the more likely you are to spend money on microtransactions. I mean, so.
Yeah. And that's one of the things for me is like, I've bought everything in the store for State of Decay 2, just for the same reason of I'm not going to buy the game.
Of course, I'll throw out there, if you get the game for $9, you might be more motivated to buy some of the things, microtransactions that you wouldn't have. So they may still end up getting the same amount of money from you one way or the other.
Yeah, it's just
different. But I think I would rather be like, I'm supporting this game. This is what I wanted. I'm buying it. They can clearly see that I wanted to support this, so that at least if the game doesn't. For me, it's like if a game doesn't do well, but I went the cheap route of trying to support it, but I wish that there would have been another one. I think it's reasonable for me to say, hey, I'm a little bit to blame as to why there's not another one. I went the route of getting it for $9. I wasn't wrong. They offered that to me. But if what I'm saying is I want to see games that I find interesting do well and then hopefully get more in the future, or studios that do well and have interesting games to continue to make games in the future, buying it is the better way to show that support, in my opinion. So that's what I'm going to do. But it does mean that they're a higher level. Of course, I'm more likely to have spent $9 than $40. But if you can sell me on State of Decay, I'll spend the $40.
That's what's interesting about Game Pass, right? Is like, for me, it's a very specific thing. First of all, like I've talked about on the show, like I'm not playing something I want to play like Adam Fall because I'm just choosing not to spend money on video games right now. For the most part,
good, by the way. I'm kind of thinking I'm going to buy it just because I know that you want to play it, and I do too. And so I think I may just bite the bullet and do that. But I was going to wait until after I beat Burning Shores and see what else I want to play. So,
well, that's kind of, it was funny because I was talking to Blake about it, and I'm like, I'm choosing not to buy video games right now, at least, full priced ones. I bought Schedule 1, which I haven't played, but it's a drug dealing game. It looks fun. But I said to Blake, I'm like, it's something that I want to play, but like for once in like our game sharing time, I know that you're gonna eventually buy it because you said it. So like, why am I gonna buy it now? No, like I mean, I've done it before.
You surprised me. I've told you before I'm gonna buy a game, and then you're like, "Hey, I bought it," and I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, and most of the time it's because I'm just not patient. I'm like, I know Brett's gonna buy it, and I'm never going to be the guy who's like, "I want to play Adamfall. Will you buy it?" I'll just buy it and be like, "Oh."
Dude, you totally could just be like, "Hey, yo, get those reward points now and go ahead and buy it."
No,
I wouldn't even care that I bought it, so long as I know that someone's playing it by the time I bought it. What I don't want is for me to spend $70 on a game, not play it for 3 months, and then it's $50 whenever I go to play it. But no one played it in between. I'm like, I could have just got this for $30 less.
All right, fucker. I'm finally playing The Last of Us Part 1. Leave me alone. But no, it's just been a conscious. So anyway, the point I was making is a lot of the time now I've just been like throwing stuff on Game Pass and being like, do I like this? Like, am I, with Avowed, it was one of those things where I was hankering to play Adamfall, and Adamfall was, to me, it looks like Eurojank Fallout. And I'm like, what is kind of in this vein? And so I went back to Avowed. I put another like 10 hours into it. I had a fucking fantastic time. I really like that game. But it's one of those things for me now. It's like, okay, I'll buy it on PS5. I might finish it on Xbox, but like I'm gonna really get into it on PS5 and do all the stuff I need to do and get the platinum. And State of Decay 2, it comes to PS5 tomorrow. We were joking about $500 GTA, $500 State of Decay 2 down. Like, we'll do it. 3-day early access for $100 for State of Decay 2 that came out in 2018, happily giving you my money, Phil Spencer.
That's another prong on that side too. Like some of these games where I feel like they're very likely to come to PlayStation, that's even more. I'm waiting to buy it there specifically because I want to show Microsoft that I do want them releasing their games on PlayStation. I want them to do well, so they're more likely to do day and date, so that I can play shit like Indiana Jones in November instead of April. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why I bought all of the first run. I have Hi-Fi Rush, I have Sea of Thieves, I have Pentiment, and I have U-Bot Grounded because Grounded's not my type of game. Yeah, but like I'll buy
Indiana Jones. So
yeah, I said it on the show. I was like, I'm buying every single one for the same reason you just said. Bring that shit here, I will buy it. That's why Fable got delayed day and date. So just look in terms of State of Decay 2, it's one of these things where it's a game. It's hard to explain. It's a game that I don't think about until I think about it. And then I'm like, this is one of the best games I've ever played in my life. So like, I don't really know necessarily like what that says about the game, but it was one of these things where like yesterday, I'm at work. I hope my boss isn't listening. He's not. And I finished my schedules. I finished payroll, and I'm like, I could go home, but I got my laptop and an Xbox controller in my bag. So I literally sat at the bar and played State of Decay for like an hour. I'm like watching the kitchen screen, like nothing's going on. And I'm like, yeah, I'm playing fucking State of Decay at work. Fuck you. I was having a fantastic time.
Dude, whenever I used to work food service, I brought my DS, and anytime we were slow, I'd sit in this middle section that was normally closed in one of the round booths right in front of the kitchen. I'd get something. I'd be like, hey, can I get some? Like, I was a Mexican restaurant, so I'd get like a bowl of queso and some chips and just go over there and roll up tortillas or whatever and eat it and play my DS.
Yeah.
I played almost all of Kingdom Hearts 358 Days over 2 at work on a DS. I had a DS already, and I started playing that game, and it felt like shit to move around with a D-pad. So I went and bought a 3DS, even though I didn't want one otherwise, just so I could play that game with the fucking slider.
The stick. That's funny. Look, I think if anything, you should buy it strictly because anytime you want to play it, I'm down. I will. Yeah. But like,
that'll actually probably be an Xbox game for me in that particular sense. Of I don't see any reason not to. We can communicate over Discord regardless of what system we're on. And I have that Xbox. I am kind of constantly like, I should probably look for a reason to play it because it just sits there.
I think knowing you would really enjoy it. It's just one of these things where it's just always engaging. Even when you're not doing anything, you're making progress. Like I didn't do a mission for like 2 or 3 days. I was just going out, scrounging for food, building up my resources, helping out people. What I also love is there's a bunch of factions littered around the map, and you can, you can be friendly with them, you can be enemies with them, and it all depends on like, did you do the mission quick enough? Because it expires, and if it expires, you didn't help them. They know they asked you for help, and you didn't help. You can even go up and be like, there was one I went up to, and one of the big, pain points that my community has is food. They're like, hey, I need a rucksack of food. And I was like, no. And they left. They literally just were like, all right, fuck you, literally, and left the area. And what I'm looking forward to is once I finish the plague hearts and get myself to a certain point, it'll open the next area of the map that is more expansive, not expansive, but it's I think it's like a city if I'm thinking of the right map. There's like 4 or 5 different maps you can do. And then that's just a whole other set of people, a whole other set of missions, and all of the stuff that you can do. So it's just a really good game, man. It's like I said in our Discord, and what I was kind of alluding to is like, I never think about State of Decay. So even when we made our top 25 list, I don't think State of Decay was on mine. But like playing it now, I would probably put it right next to like Witcher 3 and Red Dead, which is, if you're a longtime listener, is a crazy fucking sentence for me to say. But I think it would be like Fallout, Witcher, Red Dead, State of Decay, like Pokemon Crystal. Like that would probably be my list, because it's just, it's one of these things where like I'm a very distracted gamer, and it's had me, my computer plugged into my TV, my PS5 off. Like, for context, I hadn't earned a trophy in 2 or 3 weeks until yesterday. So it was just like plugging it in. I wasn't watching a baseball game. I wasn't watching fucking Supernatural like I'll do when I'm playing my PS5 because my laptop's open. I'm just fucking playing State of Decay. That is a factor of my computer is occupied and my monitor is occupied, but it's also like I'm just engrossed in this more than I'm engrossed in really anything that I have on PlayStation right now. That's why I went back to some older stuff. So highly recommend.
All right, so scooching over a little bit, we got a couple of games we haven't talked about here. Let's quickly do Titanfall. Yeah. And then let's talk Super Hot Mind Control Delete. Because Titanfall is an interesting one. I don't know why you're back at it. Don't you have the platinum?
I do not have the platinum, which is why I'm back at it.
All you're doing is that run?
Yeah, I'm just cleaning up. So with Titanfall, I got the hardest trophy in the game, the Becomes the Master. So I did that whole speed run thing. And then I started the second mission on master mode. And I went, fuck this. And then I never played it for like another year. And it was just one of these things where it's like, I'm trying to spend less money on video games, and just in generally, I'm trying to spend less money. And I was like, I might as well clear this up. That's how I got into Super Hot. And then I saw Titanfall 2 today, and I'm like, I already have the hardest trophy. Like, what am I doing? So I'm like 2 or 3 missions in. I've got all the collectibles so far. I'm just running through it. Titanfall is a fucking great game. So I'm really looking forward to playing it more. But it's fun. That's what I was doing right before we hopped on the show, was finishing up some missions. For some reason, I'm trying to do a 3 kill 3 Titans with 1 surge attack on master difficulty, which I just probably shouldn't be doing, but I am. So we'll see. But there's just Titanfall. Titanfall is a perfect shooter.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
It's really a perfect shooter. And a game that I want to talk about in a different context is Apex Legends. And it made me download Apex Legends again. And we'll get more into that later, because I think given the news, it'll be an interesting topic. But
well, it's funny because I want to use this as a quick way to just, because I don't want to say too much about Split Fiction. I've already mentioned that I started it, and it's good. It's me and my wife are playing it. But of course, that game has wall running, which, of course, my wife was like, she didn't get it. And I'm like, I get it, because I don't think anybody really got it. And like, don't get me wrong, there were games before that did wall running. We saw it in things like Prince of Persia or whatnot, but it was rare.
Yeah.
And I think that it really gained a lot of people's attention when Titanfall came out. And I think Titanfall 2 was really the game, since it wasn't limited to Xbox. It wasn't multiplayer focused. It had a campaign. I think a lot of people got that, like, oh shit, wall running's kind of sick.
Yeah.
And so it's funny playing Split Fiction because of things like that. But I guess the only thing I really will say about Split Fiction is I'm still really enjoying it. I think the gameplay design's so good. And I do think that the story is good. But I'll tell you, I was talking to somebody at work about A Way Out and how that game is the most thematic through line game that they have put out. And I think in a weird way, it feels like their best game, because as a package, it resolves stuff and tells a story in a way that I think is a little more traditional. Nothing's wrong with that. I think It Takes Two is very good, but It Takes Two feels like an in-between of A Way Out and Split Fiction, where they kind of have an overarching idea for a story, but they also had a lot of ideas for games, and those two things just happen to work together in a way where you get to have a lot of whimsical gameplay ideas, but they still ultimately work towards telling a story. This game feels like they had a ton of gameplay ideas and they had no fucking clue how to make a story that was grounded enough in a through line to go through. And so they just had someone eventually say, what if it's writers who are writing these stories? And then they just kind of make it work, and they weave a story that works through there. It's not bad. The performances are pretty solid. I actually think the story is interesting, but it feels like this is so gameplay first, and then they just tried to backwards their way through how to make this work as a co-op game with a narrative, since it's what they're known for. But this game, for somebody who played even A Way Out and then goes into a game that I think was even more co-op friendly for people who didn't traditionally play games like It Takes Two, for people who played It Takes Two and then moved into this game is much more difficult. Right. I am watching my wife struggle because there is a lot of concepts that she's just never dealt with. So aiming, I'm watching my wife just absolutely struggle to aim in third-person environment. And there's some, watching her have moments where there's flight and it's inverse controls, and watching her get so confused in something that most gamers know, that whenever flight is in a game, you just know that it's inverted controls. And she's over here like, why am I going down when I hit up? And I'm like, I get it. You don't have that baked in, and there's more things. I mean, it's just a lot of it is this game requires a lot more from you. No, it's flight controls. Like, like you're either in air and with a flight suit or something, and of course you have to relearn. If you don't play games, you don't know that.
Yeah.
And I had to explain to her. I was like, well, when you're in a plane and you want to go up,
you have
to pull down on the lever. But I was like, but you don't know that. Mm-hmm. So it's been interesting, and that kind of shift happening, I can tell fucks with her. So yeah, the difficulty jump is just really crazy in that. But Split Fiction is really good, and I mentioned to you that because of that difficulty spike, there is no way I can get this platinum with her. Yeah. There is a trophy in this that I cannot believe, considering it A Way Out and It Takes Two. They were ballsy to jump to a trophy like this. I don't think it's a bad trophy. It just feels out of line with what they've done up until now.
Yeah.
And that surprised me.
Interesting.
So,
I do. Yeah. That's the one sad thing about my current situation is like I had intentions of playing stuff like It Takes Two and Split Fiction because when it came out that was dead and buried. But I did have intentions of doing those games, and now I don't have that same itch. And happily for you that you're doing it with your wife, which is the way it should be. But like I played A Way Out with you, so. One of these days I would like to get into fucking that baseball game is better than A Way Out itself. 800-foot home run. That's so fun. What a night. But yeah, no, I this game looks really fun. I'm interested in Hazelight a lot. I think they're one of the premier developers. And while I do lament that like I don't necessarily have the easiest way in the world to play these games, I think it's really cool that there is a studio that's like, fuck you, we do co-op games, and that's it. You can't play these without a part. Yeah.
I love it.
And they're talking about doing a single player game, and I'm like, don't. Like, why would you do that?
The only thing
I'd like it, but don't.
I think the reason they might is strictly because I can see there being a point where they're doing pretty good at their turnaround. They make games pretty quickly.
Yep.
And I think if you keep looking at this, if they keep releasing a game every 3 years, I could see them literally struggling to come up with ideas that feel unique enough. So we'll see, though. I would love to see them welcome the challenge.
Yeah,
because so far they've done a good job.
Absolutely.
So let's scooch over to Apex. So because you have a little note beside this, and this is the last game we're going to talk about. I guess I'll quickly say Goat Simulator 3 I bought on a whim because I just wanted something to play co-op locally. Stupidly fun. Yeah. It has so many references to other games, both in just setup for story scenes and cutscenes, but also gameplay. Like it's got fucking Skyrim stuff. It's got Infamous references.
Really?
It's fun. It's crazy. Yeah, you can. So how in Infamous Second Son, you can like, if you're in the smoke power set, you can hit circle and dash through a chimney pipe up. Yeah. You can do that in this game. You can grind on electrical wires like in Infamous 2.
That's cool.
There's there's the satellites, like the digital power set from Second Son, where if you go to them, it'll just and like digital phase you across a thing. It's fucking crazy. Yeah, it's really funny. It's a lot more than Goat Simulator 1 was, and I was really surprised by that.
Yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know, Goat Simulator 3 is, for all intents and purposes, Goat Simulator 2. They're just crazy, so they call it Goat Simulator 3. I honestly, great. I think it was $30. Well spent. I played for like 4 or 5 hours the first. It's the only time I've played it so far, but had a fucking blast.
I saw you playing it, and I'm like, hell yeah. I like Goat Simulator 1. I never platinumed it or finished it, but
that fucking Flappy Bird trophy sucked because the game did not control well enough for that level of like
platforming.
So Apex. What we got here?
Hold on. Game. Quick, before Apex, I got the platinum in Super Hot.
Oh shit, you're right.
Mind Control Delete. That's a great game. If you like Super Hot, you'll like Mind Control Delete.
So is this like a sequel or like DLC?
I don't think it's a sequel. And it's not. It's a standalone game, so it could very well be a DLC. But what I think it is basically just a level select. It's like level. I will say that it's pretentious. And if you've ever played Super Hot, you know that it's pretentious. But like,
so I have a confession, Chris.
You never played Super Hot?
I've never played Super Hot. And you know the irony? I was going to play Super Hot on VR. Because I thought that sounded interesting.
Yeah.
So I was saving it for that. And my VR controller hasn't worked for months. So I need to call Sony and do something. I'm so debating just fucking going on eBay and buying one for $100, $120, whatever. It's ridiculously priced. But I'd honestly rather do that and get it than have to wait a month and a half and call Sony and spend 4 hours on the phone with them. No.
The only thing that I think with this game is there was a couple sequences at the end. There was one sequence where you had to press square. So you basically like I don't necessarily want to, but you go through a bunch of these things, and what you're doing at the end of the game is pressing square to say super hot over and over again, and it's doing these like little pop-ups of like, oh, you left the game, no more enemies to kill, all this kind of stuff. But it took so long that I held my controller, smashing X, went upstairs, used the bathroom, continuing to press X, came back downstairs, and it was still going. That's when I was like, all right, Jesus Christ. But then to beat the game and get the last trophy I needed, you have to do a 2.5 hour loading screen in real time. And it was one of these things where I'm like, I'm going to bed because I know this is coming up, and I'm going to bed. But this is a little too much. Like, this is a little too meta for me. But look, overall, the game is good. The platinum's really easy and it's fun. I recommend it highly, but I don't have too much to say. If you've played Super Hot, you know what this is. You kill guys, and time doesn't move unless you do. It's cool. But yeah, Apex. So I don't have a ton to say about Apex because, and this is the reason that I wanted to talk about it, because I'm wondering if you've ever had this experience, which I'm not sure that you have because you're not a big multiplayer guy. But I turned off Apex, and I was so disgusted in a way by the state of the menu that it pissed me off, and I deleted it immediately.
Okay, so hold on.
So let me put
We're going to go into this.
So the question I want to ask you is that if you've ever had a situation like that. So I opened Apex, and the first thing that popped up was a money bundle for $100. And then a comeback bundle that was like, oh, welcome back. Here's this track that you can do and get all of these rewards. And then I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Neat. So then I hop into the character menu, and there's a bunch of characters that you have to buy, which whatever. I haven't played in like 10 seasons. Fine. But then the next screen is a battle pass for every character. And then the next screen is a battle pass. And then the next screen is a $250 collection track that you have to pay for individual items on. And then the next screen was a track where you buy one thing and then you get a loot box. And then you buy another more expensive thing and then you get 2 loot boxes. And then you buy another more expensive thing and you get 3 loot boxes. And then the next screen was more microtransactions. And if everybody knows listening to this podcast, I am not anti-microtransaction. I am borderline the opposite of a hater of microtransactions. But this was just so disgusting to me that I turned the game off. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And I only went back into Apex because of how much fun I was having with Titanfall. And I had to go through 5 minutes of EA trying to take my money for a game that I haven't played in 2 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't support this anymore.
So this is a great example of where I think game design often gets lost. And also, honestly, it's another thing of where my wife and I play this phone game, Royal Match, a lot. And it is a game that is built in a way where it is very easy to get incentivized into spending money in order to get more lives so you can continue playing because you only have 5. But you can buy this $10 Royal Pass that they do for like 60 days. And it gives you, of course, there's a Royal Pass that's free, but if you pay the $10, you get this other side where you can unlock all these extra power-ups and coins, and you get 8 lives. And so if you're enjoying the game and you have a fun time doing this little match game, and they also have all these other mini games that aren't match-based, but if you're doing all that and you enjoy it and you run out of lives, you're kind of at a standstill. So you're motivated to buy different packs, and they're all very expensive. But I would have thought that that's what I would be getting out of a mobile game, is like it constantly being like, here's this, here's that, here's this. Yeah. And I've been very surprised that I hardly ever spend money on that game. What I usually do is if I've played it enough in that 60-day window and the Royal Pass is about to end, but I've already completed the Royal Pass, and then after you complete it, if you continue to get the things that go towards it, you can essentially rank up like 25 more times. I actually think it's 50 more times, and it gives you 5,000 coins in the bonus bank that you only get if you complete it, but you only get the bonus bank if you pay it. And I don't need the coins. I have way more. I have like 70,000, which is if you don't play the game, you don't know. That's an insane amount of coins. And I got them all just from playing the game. I didn't buy any of them. But I almost always do it because I'm like, it's $10. I have played this game enough this 2-month period that $10 feels so easily worth it. And cool. It's just fine. It's a good way to do that. But I've been so surprised. And part of the reason I always spend that $10 is the game does not beat me over the head.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what a game like Apex should try and do, I know what it's doing. You're back. You've been a good buyer before. I'm sure that honestly the algorithm looked and was like, give him everything because the chance of him buying even one thing is pretty high. But I think there's something to be said about coming back to a game you haven't even played and being beaten over the head before you even get to remember why you like the game.
Yeah, if it was subtle, they could have gotten me.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, dude, keep it simple. Let you jump into a match without showing you any fucking thing.
Right.
One match and let you have that moment like, damn, this game's kind of fun. And then show you one thing. Be like, hey, while you were gone, by the way, look at this new battle pass. It's pretty sweet, right? Then let you play 2 or 3 more games and then go, hey, here's this track that you can get and you can go through these things. Okay, cool.
I should be clear. Most of this stuff was not pop-ups. This was me looking through the game. I do want to be clear about that. I don't. Well, the only pop-up that I got. The only pop-up that I got was the comeback bundle and then the battle pass stuff. But
so you could have just straight went, hey, after that first screen, you could have went hop into a game.
But again, to be clear, I got to the character battle passes before I got to the characters. Right? So I didn't get to see because what I was really curious about was who's new? Like who haven't I seen before? Like what did I miss? And the first thing that I got to before that was pay 1,000 tokens for this Bangalore track.
So,
which to me is insane.
Because I haven't played Apex. I want a little bit of context here. And for anybody else who maybe hasn't played, you went to the store to look at the characters.
No.
Okay, so what I'm
the characters are not in the store. Though there's a heroes menu. You said you were
looking through it, right? Okay, so how did you get there? Because you said you had the opportunity to play the game, but you wanted to look at the heroes. But once you started the process of trying to look at the heroes, then you had to go through all this before you could get to the one thing that you were looking for, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I still think that's pretty bad. That's pretty over.
It's egregious. Yeah. It was egregious to see. Buy this Bangalore battle pass for 1,000 Apex coins before I got to see Bangalore. Like that was crazy to me. And it's one of these things where like, I would have been a lot more forgiving of this stuff in a way. I would still be kind of grossed out because it's a lot of microtransactions. And again, to put into context of how I feel about microtransactions, one of Brett's friends played Marvel Snap. And I sent Brett a picture of my most expensive deck and my collection level, and your friend was like, holy shit. Like this is not coming from a place of me being anti microtransaction. Okay, because one of my decks is probably worth a couple $100 just in terms of the splits and the variants, all this kind of stuff I have on it. I love it. I'm very proud of that deck. And I paid money for it. But like this was one of these things where I'm like, I am a willing consumer here. And you've put me in a position where I don't even want to play your game. And I think the way that I could have been a little bit more forgiving of is it's like, when I played, I was an Octane main. I have like 10,000 kills on Octane. And I had no progress on this battle pass thing towards Octane. And I get it. Like I haven't played with that pass, but you would have incentivized me to buy it in some way if it had been like, oh, hey, if the pop-up was, hey, we just, they knew that I was coming back because they offered me a comeback path, right? For not playing. That's what it was. Instead of, bam, also we've done this and you have this much progress towards Octane, or you've completed the Octane one because you played so much Octane before we introduced this. You pay the 1,000 tokens, you get all of this right now. But I was starting at 0 with this stuff. And that I don't know. I just didn't. To me, it was just crazy to see something that like I was almost defending blind because you've talked with Sean. He has this habit of like he knows better than the devs sometimes, and a lot of people have that when they play video games. I have that sometimes. I'm sure you do, and he does a lot. And I would defend Apex blind against Sean, and I can't defend it.
Yeah. On that note, real quick, I think. some people treat it like they literally know better than the devs. I think what most people are, of course, trying to say when they talk that way is, this is true, by the way, I know better than the devs what would make this game the best for me.
Yes.
And that is true.
Exactly.
No one other than me knows what would make this game the best for me. Though at the same time, I think that there are times I've seen examples of players saying something, and I'm like, I don't actually think they want the game to be that. They have just fooled themselves into thinking it. And the moment that it happened, they would be like, why did I think I wanted this?
Right. So,
but yeah, you're right. You're and that's why I think it's important. You got to be careful about blindly defending something, because context can change in a really quick manner, first of all. And what's weird about these games that are free to play is that they are more motivated than any game on the market to do this. And that's just the reality. Like, I like Warframe. I think Warframe is actually incredible. I don't play it super often because they go hard on making sure that you know all the ways in which you can spend money to make the game not take you 700 hours to get something that someone could just buy for $7. You know, and that sucks. But it's also like, okay, I get it. But it's why I like games that kind of take the hybrid approach. Pay for the game, but there's also microtransactions. But I know that that's just hard because some people won't. And you can ultimately make more money off the people who won't pay for your game, but will pay for things in the game. But it just sucks to feel like you are playing a game. Like, I could see myself playing more Warframe. I'm just not a forever gamer, but I could see myself playing more Warframe if I just felt like I could pay $70 and be done. Like, I kind of wish the game would be like, if you pay $70, you have everything. But that would...
It's worth way more than $70 to them.
Exactly. And so it's never going to happen.
And that's an interesting thing that I've had, not an argument, but like on Twitter, there's a Marvel Snap bundle that is very highly priced. It's like $100. But the resources in there, if you were to just buy the gold that's in there, is $100. And then it came with, two variants, and it came with, card borders, and it came with credits. So that bundle in the Marvel Snap economy is worth what you're paying.
Yeah, this is true of Sea of Thieves, right? Like, whenever I did a couple of the season passes, once I knew that I was going to be high enough level to get the thing I actually wanted from the season pass, then I'd buy it. But it's kind of the same thing, right? In that game, usually the season pass would have as much gold in the season pass as if you had just bought that much gold, and then you still get the season exclusive gears and outfits and boats, and it's like, okay, cool. This is the same as me spending $10 on this dumb currency that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah,
and I'm just getting that plus more. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely. So I get it, and I see the balance. But
and the argument that was going on was, this guy was like, "This is egregious. Nothing should be costed that way." And I'm like, sure, you don't have to buy it, but it is worth, in terms of the prices they've set, the money. So it's one of these things. It's Marvel Snap is a free to play game. You could do. So in like a micro level, I'm not the biggest spender in Marvel Snap. I know I follow the biggest spender in Marvel Snap. He's a fucking executive for NVIDIA. He's good. But like, people like me, and especially that guy, are the reason that like you could play Marvel Snap for free and never spend a dime. So like, there has to be that balance. So
that's an interesting one too, because as a creator, I think a lot of the times creators are a little more geared towards, I would give it away if it just meant that somebody played the thing I created. I don't know that happens as much on a game with a dev team of that level, but I think that a lot of the times, very small teams that feel a lot more ownership over the full title do have that. There are people that are like, oh, the game is banned in your area, pirate it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're in Australia, and they said no, fuck it, pirate it. We don't care. Just play it. We want to hear that you like the thing we made. Like, yeah, we want to make money, but since we can't off of you anyway, we'd rather just hear that you enjoyed the thing that we spent this time on. So there's always that balance, but there's plenty of more talk that we can have in a bit about price and where your levels are. So I'm going to kind of go in reverse order here. First thing we'll talk about as we go into news, so we're shifting over, is going to be Helldivers 2. But quickly, if you want to be part of our conversations, or about talking with us about what we talk about the show, asking questions, which we have some today, about one of the big topics that we're getting into today, or whatever, you can find us on Twitter at Triangle SQRD, or with Chris, who's a little more, quite a bit more active than I am, at Chris_Figs, Figz, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
You can find us in our
Chris
Discord.
Figs_.
Chris Figs_. Yep. See, look, I was mistaken. You can find us in our Discord, which is linked below, whether or not you're watching on YouTube or listening on podcast services. Hop in there and you can talk with us as well as a lot of our patrons and listeners, and give your thoughts about things that are happening in the gaming industry. We got a couple of people who painstakingly make sure that most of the news for what's happening on PlayStation gets pasted in there, and we appreciate that. Or you could support the show with more than just your time, which we are already so thankful for, by going over to patreon.com/Nartech and giving as little as $1 per month to support the show. So Helldivers 2. They faced major challenges at launch with overwhelming player demand, crashing servers, and straining Arrowhead's infrastructure, pushing the team to its limit. CEO Johan Pilestad, you gotta love those names you can't pronounce, recalled the lowest point as a call from a high-ranking PlayStation executive, which, though friendly, underscored the seriousness of the situation. They're really tough, or quote, they're really tough. We're doing our best. We're trying to keep the ship floating, he told them, admitting he couldn't sleep, staying up until 3 or 4 a.m. reading forums and Reddit to understand player frustrations. The stress was immense, but Pilstad felt personally, I love butchering it at this point, felt personally responsible and remained deeply engaged with the community. Despite the pressure, the team rallied, rapidly improving the game's back end and stabilizing the experience. He praised the resilience, saying, quote, even when we are at our lowest, we just kept pushing. The team has been phenomenal, end quote. With Sony's support and the team's dedication, Helldivers 2 turned its rocky start into a recovery story driven by transparency, hard work, and community engagement. And I'm so far out of Helldivers 2 at this point, not because I didn't enjoy it. I did. I've long been curious at how that game has continued to approach microtransactions, because I was very fond of their take. Buy the game at a discounted price, and there's many ways for us to make extra money so that you kind of meet that middle ground of where you're talking about. More people can play the game at a better entry price because of the people who are willing to spend money after the fact and essentially get up to the $70, $80, maybe $160 total for this game and experience. That way some people can get it at $40, which again, this is going to come into an interesting conversation here in a bit when we start talking about game prices. But no, this is awesome. And I always love hearing about stuff like this after the fact, when people are kind of removed from it enough that they want to talk about it. These are some of the greatest little interview podcasts that end up coming out where people are just like, hey, let's talk candidly about what this was like. And you get to hear people being like, oh, it was hell, but also we cared a lot, so we wanted to do what we could,
Yeah.
Yeah, you see yourself ever returning to Helldivers 2?
No, probably not.
I see myself doing it in terms of the interest is there, but the competition from games I haven't played or games that I don't have to worry about playing with friends, therefore I can play on my own time as I feel needed, makes it difficult. It's kind of where I'm at.
I just think for me, it was like Helldivers had its moment, and I really enjoyed that moment. But the moment's passed. It's like, I'm not, for the right game, I'm a forever gamer, but I will drop them, Marvel Rivals is my game right now. And if I'm going to spend extra time, it's going to be with Marvel Rivals. It's not going to be with Path of Exile or Helldivers. So that's kind of just where it's at right now. So as much as I like Helldivers, I don't know what they could do to get me back into it. Maybe put a State of Decay mode in there and I would play it.
For sure. All right. Next thing we have to talk about, Death Stranding 2 movie, or actually just Death Stranding movie. The upcoming Death Stranding movie, produced by A24, has announced that Michael Sarnowski, known for Pig and A Quiet Place Day One, will be directing. Hideo Kojima is closely involved as producer and creative partner. The film won't directly adapt the game's story, but will explore the universe in a new way, thank God, introducing fresh characters and themes, but aligned with the game's world. Kojima described it as a unique experience that goes beyond typical video game movies. I am so heartened by this, every bit of it. I think it's a good director choice. I think I think Hideo Kojima actually being able to be involved is good because he clearly he views his games in a kind of cinematic experience way. So I think he wants that. But at the same time, it is really hard to imagine Death Stranding being turned into a movie because that game and story embraces its gamehood very hard. And so I think you have to do a lot of shifting. And I don't really think it makes sense to try and adapt the story we've seen and strip out all this gameliness that is baked into it. And instead kind of go, we know what themes are here. We know what this world looks like. Let's look at a story that can take place in all this, but it's not weighed down by anyone's expectation about what this character is supposed to do, what this experience is supposed to look like. And I think that that's great. I've always kind of thought, like, I've said before, I think that having the Last of Us TV show just be a new story of two new people in that world would have been interesting to me in a way that telling the story again wasn't. But I don't think either of them are bad choices. I understand why they did, and it's clearly been successful. And I think that the Death Stranding movie probably still would have been successful even if it did try to adapt the movie story. But damn, is it cool that they're trying to do something different. And they still have Kojima being like, yeah, I'm part of this. I'm making some of the choices as to what's going to be different so that I know it's going to be consistent with how I've set up this world. So you've been becoming more of a Kojima fan lately. How you feeling about this?
I mean, I love Death Stranding, so I'm here for it. I'm curious if they're going to, because of the way Kojima is, like, in a lot of movies, it's like, oh, that Brad Pitt's playing a character in this game, so I'm pretty sure the movie's going to revolve around that character. But that you could say that for any character in this game. So I almost wonder if they're going to be like, none of these people are in the movie.
Well, that's kind of the way that they're talking. I kind of get the gist. This is going to be all new characters, all new story, but it still takes place in this world that is post-extinction event. Like, like this is, you still know the tone of the world, but you could set this hundreds of years later. You could set it years before the first Death Stranding with different characters. You could have one or two characters that are across both just to kind of look like, hey, tie the story together. But I guess that feels easy, relying on characters you've already worked on. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I kind of appreciate that he's taken on the challenge of like, no, this is going to be people. This is going to be stories and characters that you don't know. We're going to look at new things. I
want to meet more actresses and actors. Yeah. So we're not using any of the ones I've met already. That's probably the
real motivation.
This leads
Can
me
I have Michael Shannon in my Death Stranding movie, please?
Dude, I would shit my pants. Are you joking? That'd be so sick. Yeah. A Michael Shannon Death Stranding movie?
Dude, I love him. He's so versatile. I remember whenever I watched Bullet Train and he was in it, I was like, I fucking love Michael Shannon. God damn it, this is cool.
Bullet Train rocks.
Bullet Train is fucking sick. That movie is.
There's this leads me to a question, right? So we've already heard about Fizzant. We know that game is coming. We know that game is a game and a movie franchise.
Oh, did they say that specifically?
It's both
already.
Yeah. So here's my question for you. First question, leading question. What do you think? How long is Kojima's leash, do you think?
Oh.
Because what I'm wondering, and I could see this, are we going to play Fizzant and then halfway through the game, it goes, go see the movie? And then the movie is a 2.5 hour cutscene, and then you you go back into the game and continue? Because that's one of those things. That's a very Kojima move.
I would love that. The only thing is, I don't know who would make that movie because you are just fucking begging for people who don't play the game to not come see it. And movies are expensive to make. And who's going to go watch a Death Stranding or a Fizzant movie and be like, hey, I don't know what the fuck led into this or what happens after?
Yeah. It seems like such a Kojima move.
Yeah, it'd be ballsy, and I would love to see him do it. But I think, if I'm being honest, I think Kojima appreciates the art of storytelling too much to make a movie that can't have a story that within the bounds of the movie starts and resolves. One of the things I really like about Kojima as a storyteller is he has a pretty big commitment on making sure that he resolves whatever he sets up within his game. That doesn't mean there's never anything else that you can kind of have a thread toward, but he makes sure that there's a strong thematic resolution to these characters and what's going on for the individual stories telling. And I think that's also part of what makes 5 so weird, because 5 just feels like it ends. And you're like, this doesn't feel like a Kojima's dedication to storytelling. Then you hear why. He was basically forced to finish the game as is, don't add anything else. Yeah. And so that sucks. But yeah, so I don't see that being a reality. If anything, I would see, and this is probably a kind of a crazy idea, but it would probably work better now than it did whenever they first tried it. I could see him trying to go more of a quantum break route, where it's a game and a series all at the same time, and basically you bounce between the two. But at the same time, as interesting as I think that could be, I think we've also seen Remedy push past that. And I think what Remedy was really trying to do there was make it to where they could just hire actors and film the cutscenes for the most part, and then let that play out without having to recreate all these story things with that. And if you look at something like Alan Wake 2, so much of Alan Wake 2 and even Control uses superimposed video footage over gameplay or in gameplay, or outright replaces gameplay with just camera footage, or a cutscene with just camera footage, and you keep going. And the delta between the camera footage and the video game graphics are getting smaller and smaller. And so the jarringness of that is getting less and less. And so I can play Alan Wake 2 and see real footage of his wife talking to a camera, and then bounce to me playing as video game Alan. And I'm like, cool, I didn't skip a beat. So part of me thinks that it's just not necessary, because you look at something like Death Stranding 2, and it's like, if he wanted to give you a 2.5 hour cutscene in the middle of the game, he'd just do it in game.
Yeah, that's valid point.
I mean, he was willing to do, 40-minute cutscenes, 45-minute cutscenes, and then 5 minutes of gameplay, and then 45-minute more cutscenes. Again, I'm being a little overly on that, but
Are you?
But Metal Gear Solid 4 definitely pushed fucking almost 20 years ago how far Kojima was willing to push storytelling inside of a video game. So,
yeah. Anyway, what's next?
Next thing is the last thing. And I think this is a really good thing to kind of wrap up on, because I think it touches in on a lot of things we've been talking about today. So the Switch 2 finally got revealed fully, with a big direct showing the system, showing the games you could expect, showing the features you could expect, and notably not including the price, interestingly enough, in the actual reveal, and also not including the price for anything in there. And so you get to watch that. You get to watch that, and then you get to leave and kind of go, wherever I'm feeling on this, here's this extra information that we didn't give you there. Here's the cost. Here's what games are going to cost, at least some of them. Here's some new information to chew on. I want to go ahead and throw it out there. I was not very impressed by this, but I mean that in the sense of, I did not see a reason for me to buy a Switch 2. And a lot of that hinges on the fact that I bought a Switch 1 at launch and sold it, and then bought another one, and then sold it, and then bought a Switch OLED, because I kept thinking something's finally going to make me play this thing for hundreds of hours. And I can tell you, across all 3 Switches, I've played maybe 150 to 200 hours. And if you think about how much money I spent time and time again, I mean, I sold them each time, but ultimately I probably spent around $500 for less than 200 hours of gameplay. And I think it goes to show that what makes Switch so enticing to other people, I don't have. And I think there's multi-factors, right? I don't have enough love for enough Nintendo IP to want to buy it, because I can't even do I won't play anything else on it, but I'll play all the Marios and all the Zeldas and all the Kirbys and all the, Donkey Kongs. And that's not me. That's just not what I'm going for. I'm very particular about what Zelda I like. They don't make Zeldas in that way very often anymore. They did make one. I'm still curious about one to play it. they make Metroid Prime 4, which is exactly my kind of Nintendo game, but then I have to go, do I really want to spend this money to play it at a better frame rate, or just play it on the OLED I bought and didn't fucking play? And at least try and get my money's worth out of that. So there's a lot to be said there. And I don't think it was a bad thing. I think it was for people who like Nintendo, I could see this being a good event. But I also think it was interesting that they were so exclusive with price and everything. They did not have that in there and chose to do it separately. And I guess the first thing I want to ask Chris is, I think you're in a similar boat to me. A lot of what was shown game-wise did not necessarily move the needle for you. A lot of what was shown game-wise is games we've already had the opportunity to play for years that now Nintendo customers are going to have the opportunity to play, which is great. So why is it that you think they opted to keep the price separate?
They knew.
But still release the information?
Oh, because they knew. They knew what they were going to get. And here's the thing. We have a question about it. I'm sure you'll ask. I don't necessarily think this is too much money. This is about a little bit less than I paid for my Steam Deck. But my Steam Deck has an OLED screen and a terabyte hard drive. So
I guess let's give a second here to actually go through that. So the Switch base model is priced at $449.99, so $450, with a bundle that includes Mario Kart World, available for $499.99. This pricing makes the Switch 2 the most expensive Nintendo console to date, even when adjusted for inflation, which is a huge change. And there's some stuff to consider. The Switch 2 boasts an extensive lineup of games, including Mario Kart World, an exclusive launch title featuring dynamic weather changes and off-road racing with up to 24 players, Donkey Kong Bonanza, a new adventure in the Donkey Kong series, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom getting Nintendo Switch 2 enhanced editions. Hades 2, set to debut first on the Switch and Switch 2 upon exiting early access, which is that's actually pretty cool. That's probably the biggest thing, but I'd rather wait. And Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, an upcoming addition to the Metroid series, Pokemon Legends ZA scheduled for a late 2025 release. Now, notably, a lot of these games are still coming to Switch, but they're going to be better on Switch 2. Mm-hmm. The controversy surrounding Switch 2 currently, game pricing. Some titles, such as Mario Kart World, are priced at $80, a $10 increase over previous standards set in the industry. Nintendo defends this by citing the enhanced content and development cost, which I definitely want to talk about. Hardware cost, the console's $449.99 price point has raised eyebrows, especially considering the additional cost for accessories and games. Analysts suggest factors like the increased component cost and tariffs contribute to this pricing, but honestly, I'm quite dubious of that, if I'm being honest here. C button placement. New Joy-Con controllers feature a C button near the home button, intended for game chat and game share functions. However, its placement has led to concerns about accidental presses during gameplay. And lastly, pre-order delays. In the U.S., pre-orders were postponed due to newly imposed tariffs, causing uncertainty among potential buyers. Despite these controversies, anticipation for the Switch 2 seems to remain high, with many eager to experience its new feature and games offerings. So I think immediately going in there, I want to nail in the things that I'm most curious about. I think the most curious aspects here, and I do mean curious, I'm not even scathing against Nintendo. I was genuinely surprised at the price here. And with that in mind, a question, like you said, comes in. RMG0731 asks, what are your thoughts on Nintendo's pricing? The Switch's success was built around lower price barrier to entry, winning casuals, family, and kids, and those buying the Switch as a secondary console. Yet they are pricing the hardware as a high-end tech above PS, Xbox, along with their software. Just seems they are going to set themselves up for a massive drop-off. And then I guess a secondary question that we can kind of go over here as well as Rude Days 93, both of these are patrons, by the way. Thank y'all. He says, over or under $499 on the new price of the Nintendo Switch 2, saying that the tariffs will likely switch that. So, yeah, Chris, first and foremost, what are your thoughts on the pricing? How do you think this is going to impact them? And let's start there. In the long run, I do want to talk about what this looks like or what this could look like for the future of gaming, but let's just start with that. What were your thoughts on the price?
I didn't really I wasn't shocked by the price of the system itself. I was shocked by the price of Mario Kart. But here's the thing. Okay, first of all, let me just, before I say what I'm about to say, leave me alone. I don't play Nintendo games. I don't fucking like them. I don't like platformers. I certainly don't like Mario Kart. Brett's the driving guy. I'm the baseball guy. Mario Kart.
I don't like Mario Kart.
Mario
I would
Kart,
be hard pressed to say hate, but I don't like Mario Kart.
Mario Kart does not look worth $60.
Agreed.
Because here's the thing, right? Just off the
personal
GTA
judgment, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, this is a PlayStation podcast. Get the fuck out of here with your Switch. Just off the trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6, I would pay the $100. I'm not saying I would like it, but I would pay it, and I wouldn't be all that upset about it when push came to shove. There is no world where what I saw from Mario Kart World justifies $80. And I understand that, like, I think part of Nintendo's aesthetic is that their games look like shit, but the game looks like shit. Even the edges are squared on a round bend. Like, you can accept that as a Nintendo fan. You can be totally fine with that, but that does not justify $80 to me. And I think, to me, that's the biggest thing, is none of what they showed justifies raising the price. Say what you want about Naughty Dog. Intergalactic already looks more worth $80-$90 than Mario Kart ever will. Ever will. Now, there's an argument. The best argument that you can have is that I am a person who will play Mario Kart World for the next 10 years until Mario Kart Universe comes out. And that's an acceptable thing, right? If you're going to be the person who's going to spend
solid argument,
thousands of hours with this game, your whole family is going to play it. If I was ever to get this, it would be because I know that, I can take it to my brother's house. We're all going to play Mario Kart. Mm-hmm. I get that. But if you just on the base level of what this game looked like, it doesn't justify the price. And
yeah, I think I do want to hone in on that for a second. And since you don't have as much to say about the console pricing, I think this is a good time for us to go ahead and kind of dig into specifically the game pricing and the notion that this is because of an increase in development cost.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I think that you are correct. Nothing about this screams $80. And I don't mean gameplay sense. I always say there's a world in where I can understand that for the amount of time I played Terraria, in hindsight, I would have been okay with paying $100 for it.
But you paid $5.
We're talking about context.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're talking about context in the industry. And I think it's really, really difficult to look at a game like Mario Kart World and say this justifies being $10 more than the rest of the games industry for various reasons. Now, I don't mean that doesn't mean the game will not end up getting the value that you spent out of it. You may get way more for the $80 than you do out of a game you spend $60 or $70 for in terms of time and fun. But I still think you have to look at how games are made and say, in context of what the industry is doing, they are not justifying this price raise. And I think if you look at that, it comes down to the fact that Nintendo's shtick is twofold, and it is on their hardware. But like RMG says, their shtick is using outdated technology in unique and endearing ways, and having games that are so fun that don't really have a lot of the cost factors for development that usually come from AAA gaming. Therefore, you get to make a game and sell it and make sure that it works a lot better because there's less avenues of what can go onto it. So I think you look, Nintendo has a history of games that do not try and push photorealistic graphics. They're not having to do anything remotely there. They're not pushing a lot of voice acting. They don't have hours and hours of voice acting and script writing and open worlds to design. That is 99% not what their games are. And even the games that are like that, Breath of the Wild, there's very minimal, if any, voice acting. And there's very minimal, if any, story. And I don't mean that to shit on it. I mean that those games are made with minimal story being baked into it. They're meant to be fun to play. It is a design choice around the way they want those to go. So when you look at all these games, I'm sorry, there is no world in which you can look and say that a Horizon Forbidden West, which didn't choose to be $80, you're telling me that Mario Kart World cost more to develop than Forbidden West? We all know that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no world. You're not having to make hours and hours of story content that has to be fresh and original and written and mechanics around it. You are making a thing with a set of mechanics that you can probably learn every mechanic in the game within 10 hours, and then some secrets that you can explore around.
Honestly,
and that's cool. Great. I don't mind any of that. But nothing that you're showing graphically, feature set, you have not proven to me that there's any reason to go up in the price other than that you wanted to. I think saying that Mario Kart World, like all other games, is now $70 is completely fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's crazy to use this as an example and say this is going to be 80. And apparently some of the other games are going to be 80. At first I thought it was just Mario Kart, and I thought this is just a leverage tactic. This is trying to get people who even have the littlest bit of interest in Mario Kart to buy the $500 bundle so they can save $30.
Right.
And because save $30 sounds better than save 20, even though save 20 still works. So why the fuck not just make the game $70?
Mm-hmm.
But again, I say that from saying that in context to the industry and what that game most likely cost to develop, there is no world in which that game took as much to develop as Forza Horizon 5. We'll use a racing game for a racing game as an example. That's just not what these games are. And so I think it's crazy to look at that and say that it's justifiable in terms of strictly context of the industry. Now, there is, of course, the reckoning to be say that Nintendo has considered how well their remaster of a Wii U game on Switch sold and has continued to sell 64 million copies or some crazy shit like that for a 12-year-old Mario Kart game that when they remastered, they didn't even really do much to and just slapped full price on it again. Hey, you've shown them that the proof is there, so I get it. But I am surprised. I am surprised that you double having more expensive hardware than you've ever really had, definitely in the last 25 years, with a game that is that higher priced and in general moving up. I think it's crazy.
How do you like that? The thing for me is like, I could always justify the Switch as a second console because of its price and because it wasn't that powerful. But like, how do you justify now not buying a PS5 digital and a Portal and spending $100 extra? Like, how do you justify that? I know that it's not one-to-one.
If you're not a Nintendo game fan, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, right, the extra part is going down. Well, look, I think that there are clearly, I know for a fact there are people listening to this that all these prices don't matter because they know the fun they're going to have and they don't mind. And I'll actually say, tech-wise, it seems like the Switch is a considerable jump up from the Switch 2 is a considerable jump up from the Switch. And so I get that. And that's why I say I'm actually not criticizing the price of the console so much as I'm saying I was surprised to see Nintendo break their own trend and choose to go with something seemingly more powerful at a higher cost, because Nintendo's whole shtick for a long time and all their most successful things are outdated technology, reasonable price. And that's exactly what Switch was. And I would have thought that they would try to bump that up, make it to where they can, of course, play some of the PS4 and Xbox One games. And maybe if they get real lucky, some really great ports of PS5 games, like how The Witcher 3 ended up being able to run on Switch, crazily enough. And I would have thought that they would have really tried to hit that $350 price point with where tech is now. I really thought $400 was the cap of what they do, and seeing them kind of go $450, it's $50. I know it's not a huge difference, but it is surprising. And I don't claim to know that this is going to impact what people are interested in, but I think something similar to what Chris said is exactly how I feel. I think the people who are diehard Switch fans, who cannot wait for this, I think this is going to have a great first, maybe even second year, but I think it's going to have a great first year. And then I think we're going to see whether or not this price, because it's not going to change. If anything, there's a chance that this price goes up. Don't even thinking about tariffs, just thinking about component cost. This could go up just like we saw the digital PlayStation 5 go up in price. And with that in mind, a year and a half in, is that price going to scare off the people who bought the Switch because, ooh, $300, ooh, $250, ooh, Switch Lite, $200?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there is something to be said about a price point in which the average person goes, I get it. And clearly people have been buying Mario Kart for their kids at $60. But what happens when someone walks into a store to buy Mario Kart for their family and goes, $80? And again, I don't claim to know the answer. I think it's a really interesting 1-2 punch for Nintendo to so quickly and so confidently shirk off the business model they have been using for so long. And I'm very curious to see what it does for them, both in the games that will be like the games that will be possible on the system moving forward as a result. Like, will they see more games from the Xbox Series consoles and PS5 and more games for the rest of this generation start launching Switch 2 day and date? If so, that's kind of impressive. That's cool because they didn't have to go that route. And secondarily, what's it going to look like for their audience? Are they going to actually mess their chances up of being able to recreate the Switch's success by doing this? If I had to guess, it wouldn't be massive. If I had to guess, this is a system that will still end up selling 80 million units and be a massive success. But it could also not impact it at all. And this could be a system that sees the same 120 million units or more. And it's interesting. It's just not so obvious.
So. My biggest thing here is, I guess in terms of like the reaction to the price, my biggest thought is like, you know, how there are a lot of people who seem stuck on like games are too expensive. And it's like, how do you see eggs for $12, milk for $6, you know, a gallon of gas for $3.50, and you're surprised that like I've said it on the show hundreds of times, the luxury products are expensive. I'm not surprised by it. You know, like you're in the same situation as I am. I'm looking at in my gaming setup, I'm looking at like $1,400, right? And you're looking at the same thing. And, you know, behind me, you're looking at the same kind of shit. And that's because we love our hobby, but we do need to accept that at a certain point, it's all going to get more expensive. But you are correct in the sense of like, I don't know. It seems like they're trying to sell this to hardcore gamers. And that's why, like, I don't know if we're going to talk about the games. I don't necessarily care to. But like the Duskbloods is the most insane thing they've ever done, because that game is gonna flop. I don't know any Nintendo person who's like, I want to play a PvP FromSoft game,
a PvPvE FromSoft game on my head. Well, look, I'm open minded to willing to see it go through, but it does not strike me as an obvious thing for Nintendo's core audience. And I agree with you. It does seem like they're trying to pull more people in. I think they might have viewed that the Switch was a little too casual focused, and this is a way to try and pull more people in. And I do think from a device look standpoint, I think it looks a lot more sophisticated than the Switch did. I think that if the magnets work the way they're talking about, I think it's going to feel a lot more sophisticated than the Switch did. It's definitely
the mouse
more
thing
capable.
Is sick.
That's a really cool idea.
That's a cool thing.
So, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said here. I think it's an interesting piece of tech, but I don't think it's interesting enough with enough things that would pull me in. And I think at the end of the day, it's always this thing of, for all the things that I loved about the PS3 that weren't gaming focused, the reason I really love the PS3 and the reason it's one of my favorite gens is because of the games. And the reason that the PS4 was so great, in spite of losing most of the functionality that the PlayStation 3 offered as a non-gaming machine, was because PlayStation 4 had a lot of very good games. So at the end of the day, all that stuff that's cool is cool, but they are gimmicks, and I like gimmicks. I like the Vita. I think that it was cool that Uncharted would let you use the touchpad to climb a rope. It's interesting, but I also like that they didn't force me to do it. And so when you look at all that, I think it's an interesting use case, and I think that they're doing a lot of cool stuff here. But we also know that 90% of games are probably, honestly, 99% of games are probably not going to use this mouse functionality. It's not going to end up really mattering. It's a cool idea that's probably going to languish not being fully utilized. And that's okay, because a lot of cool ideas end up going that route. But at least someone thought of them and you get to try it. So those aren't a moving factor on the price for me, really. And so when you look at the rest of this, it just kind of comes down to, most of the games you've shown are games I've had access to and I've either already played or didn't play because they didn't interest me enough to play. So playing them on the go is not going to change for me.
So that's something I actually want to
get me with. No, go ahead. Let's go. Then yours.
No, I kind of want to look at that for a second because I think to me that's one of the more confusing things about this is I don't understand the logic of charging more than a PS5 to play games that are already on PS5 that look worse than games on PS5. Right? Because I think
it's the on the go, right? I mean, I don't.
But
I'm not underplaying that. A lot of people like that.
Yeah. Okay. Why am I paying about the same price? Actually, why am I paying more than a Switch LCD for games that look worse on the? Or I'm sorry, a Steam Deck LCD for games that are already on Steam Deck LCD and look worse than Steam Deck LCD.
Now, I don't know about that. And that's gonna be proof is in the pudding once we start getting games and people can analyze them. And that depends on one of the things I thought was most interesting about this thing, but I also understand it. Nintendo knows that most of their audience is casual. So even though they also seem to want to be pulling in a lot of the primary gamers. Or that sounds weird. I'm not saying Nintendo doesn't have core gamers that are just more focused around Nintendo IP. They definitely do. But it seems like they are trying to pull mind share from the PlayStation, Xbox with some of their choices here. And that's interesting. But why I think that they did not talk about DLSS at all, even though I know technically speaking it is possible on that. This is an NVIDIA product. This is being made by NVIDIA. This is an NVIDIA chipset. DLSS is possible. DLSS probably exists. But what's interesting is we're not seeing it in use in any of the Nintendo games they showed so far. At least there's no evidence that it's being there. We're not seeing that in Mario Kart World. You're seeing a straight up 1440p image when it's docked. So it's not 4K. That's another thing. Just because it can do 4K doesn't mean the resolutions you'll actually see is 4K. Just like it having a 1080p screen does not mean you should expect that most of the handheld games in handheld mode will run at 1080p. I don't know if you know this, any random listener, but most of this games on Switch did not run at 720p in handheld mode, despite the fact that it had a 720p screen. That's another surprise. I was very surprised to see them jump up to 1080. It's not worth the battery payoff, if I'm being honest. But yeah, whatever. We'll bounce back down. So with all that in mind, I get where you're going from. Like, right, the Switch 2 is more versatile, technically speaking, but it's also I say this, and sometimes people are like, it's not that complicated. It's not. I'm not saying that the Steam Deck is an insanely complicated thing, but it is more complicated than just hitting download and play, for just being real. Yeah, there is more to it. There is a chance that you get a game that does run on Steam Deck, but you have to do work to get it to run well. You have to do work to get it to go. There are games that aren't Steam Deck verified that you can fuck around with and play around with or look for. They make it pretty easy despite being PC gaming on Steam Deck. But I think that if we're really being honest with ourselves, Switch 2 is going to be easier. And
easier and easy are not the same. You go if you go on Steam Deck and go to the store, it doesn't take you to Steam. It takes you to Works on Steam Deck, and then you can go into the rest of Steam.
I know.
So this isn't. It's not any different than going to the Nintendo store. And I'm not even using what I'm more saying is I don't care that Hogwarts is there. I don't care that Cyberpunk is there. I don't even care that there are worse versions than the PS5 version. What I don't understand is why you announced a console for $450 and only showed downgrades of third-party games that are already out. Why didn't you show Hades 2? Mm-hmm. Why didn't you show something new?
Why was Silk Song a 3-second gameplay? Right. Yeah, I thought that was crazy.
My thing is not that Hogwarts is there and Cyberpunk is there. That's all cool. And if I ever bought a Steam Deck, I could see myself buying Cyberpunk just to be like, I'm at work and I'm playing Cyberpunk. That's cool. Or I'm on the bus Switch and I'm playing. Yeah, Switch. Sorry. You know, if I ever did that, I could see that. But why did you show your new console and go, you can finally play these, and then tell me it's $450? So to me, as a gamer and who knows his shit, you know, more than I guess the average bear will say, I know that I'm buying a worse version here. So are you really trying to sell me a $450 console with worse games that I've played? Why didn't you show me something new and then go, also Cyberpunk, Hogwarts, Red Dead Redemption, Elden Ring, bam, 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 bam. These are all coming. Why did you focus on this? Why
was the sizzle reel new games for 2 seconds and the things that you focused on third-party games that have been out for a while? I'm not going to focus so much on the downgrade part, because while it's true that they're going to be downgrades from their console counterparts on PlayStation just because it's a weaker system. It's the reality.
And that's fine. For the record.
Yeah, you can't play them on the go on those systems. You can with a Portal, but a Portal is not quite the same. It requires internet, all these things. So, right, I think if you look at what Switch offers as an experience, I get that. But I agree with you that it should have been, here's all the new games. Be excited about that. And then also be excited about, hey, all these other games are now possible, and let's show them in a scissor reel. It was an odd showing, but I don't know. I don't know if the thought process is that there are people who are primarily Switch players and not a dual console owner or not PC driven because they want simplicity, who have always been like, oh, dang, I wish I could play Cyberpunk, but the Switch just can't handle it. And now they're like, woo, Switch 2 with Cyberpunk. I'm sure that it exists, but I'd be very curious the quantity of people that that was their thought process on. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think... damn, what was I thinking a second ago? Something came to mind that I was like, yeah, this was a very interesting reality for this. It's just a short. I thought it was funny that they were like, oh, by the way, Cyberpunk on Switch is going to be $70, which I know it includes Phantom Liberty, so that's not that bad of a deal. In all honesty, it's like $40 for Cyberpunk and $30 for Phantom Liberty or whatever. But I thought, isn't it crazy that the gaming landscape we're in is that they're charging $70 for a game that I bought for $5 in a steelbook from Best Buy less than 6 months after launch.
Yeah.
And that's not Nintendo's fault. That's honestly just Cyberpunk's fault, but I think it's just wild to see that that's where we are gaming wise. So I don't have a ton to say about this, and I actually want to focus a little bit more on what I think this means. Like, of course, this is all interesting to see how these things go. And I think what we're really trying to get at here is that Nintendo have decided to break a seal, and that's not normally their place. That's not normally where they go. Them being the first person to price a game at $80 for the standard edition and not some like 3-day early access gold edition or bullshit like Ubisoft's been doing all generation is interesting. That is very odd. It is unlike Nintendo. Paying for a game that allows you to tour what the Switch 2 allows you to do, the Welcome Park game that they have, paying for that is $10. Surprising. And what's weird is that Sony were more Nintendo-like with PS5 by including Astrobot, which was a couple of hours game for free that was very heavy mechanic and good and showed off the system's abilities. And then Nintendo has a game that does the same thing, but way more tutorial-like, and it's $10. It's just crazy to see how some of the shakeup in, those deaths of people who were core players in Nintendo, new leadership. It's crazy. But the bigger conversation I want to have is, I think we were all kind of like, what is the Pro? The Pro coming in at this $700 price point. What is that? Is it because it's tip of the tip? Is it just because it's only for a very small segment of the industry? Or is this a good indicator of where consoles in general are moving, and we should expect that for next gen? And I didn't think Pro on its own in a vacuum without seeing any other next gen technology yet warranted me saying that for sure we should expect consoles of the future to be $700. But seeing Nintendo come out with a console at what is effectively $450, $500 makes me think that maybe, just maybe, we should expect to see, because everything's pushing. If the lowest common denominator, usually being Nintendo, is pushing, I think there's no reason that we shouldn't expect a PS6 to be $600, $650, $700. Do you agree with that? Or do you think this is just Nintendo having their, probably going to go over better, but admittedly having their PlayStation 3 moment off of the success of PS2, where it's like Switch was a monster success, so guess what we're going to do with Switch 2? way more money, bitch. Welcome. What's up?
Look, I think there's more evidence that they will be that expensive than they won't be that expensive. But I do think past $500 for a base level console, you're getting past where you can sell 100 million units. I think for me, if I had to guess, I would say the PS6 is five digital, 600 with a disc drive, and games are $85 to $90.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they can. I think they would rather sell you the console cheaper and make the money up on the back end with the games, because that's where they make the most money. So to me, that it almost gets to a point of, what's the point of selling $50 million $700 consoles when you could sell $100 million $6 consoles and just raise game prices by $10? That the thing is, the game price thing is probably already going to happen.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I was curious to see that within the same generation, the cost went up. We're seeing someone else already go a base game $80. I really thought if anyone did that, it would be Grand Theft Auto 6, just because of what that game's going to be. But I know that you've been saying that. My real gut feeling this entire time, up until now, I'm a little more shaken, was that regardless of the fact that Rockstar could, they were still going to actually just charge $70 for Grand Theft Auto 6, and then let it be a microtransaction machine. Now, I don't know. I think it all depends on what is the real backlash to Nintendo on this, on specifically game prices. Now, there's an element we haven't talked about here, which I think is important to this. Nintendo have offset this slightly by having it to where digital copies of their games are $10 cheaper.
Is that still true?
I want to double check that. I mean, they definitely talked about it. Hold on.
I don't know that that's true anymore, because the original rumor was that Mario Kart was 90 physical, 80 digital. I think it's just 80 and 80.
All right. So this is what we actually are seeing. This is important. Mario Kart World is $80 digitally and $90 physically in USD. Donkey Kong Bonanza is $70 digital and $80 physical. Now, a very important thing to note here that I don't think everyone understands. If we look back at why disc-based gaming became so popular to begin with, despite being inferior technologically speaking, is because discs are super cheap to produce and they can hold a lot more data at a reasonable price. The thing about cartridges, and the reason that Final Fantasy VII had to, as far as Square was concerned, shift off of Nintendo and go to PlayStation because it made business sense, is because Final Fantasy VII was going to be a huge game. And to fit that game on a cartridge means that they needed to buy a cartridge. Nintendo has different levels of cartridges for different size games. And whenever you go so big, the cartridge for the bigger games cost more because there's more memory baked in, and so they have to pay more to make it. So that means a game like Final Fantasy VII would have been over $100 on the Nintendo 64 had they released it. When all they had to do was switch over to PlayStation with a disc, put it on multiple discs that cost less than a single cartridge from Nintendo, and have the game listed at a regular $60 price point, right? And so what's going on here is the same thing. Nintendo's pushed their power of their console, and that means games like Cyberpunk are starting to be able to be on this system. And Cyberpunk is a massive game, and that means that for a physical cartridge to have most, if not all, and it may be most more often than not, of a game on it, that has to be a big cartridge. And so now they are literally having to pay more to produce physical copies, and that's why you're seeing this gap, and it's why it's so high. Unfortunately, that means that one of the biggest aspects of Switch's success, also being physical, in my opinion, became a lot crazier to look at and deal with. So this is very multi-pronged in the weirdest way. I love to see someone actually account for the difference between physical and digital distribution and how much you save from it and pass that on to the customer. That's cool. But again, we're setting a crazy precedent. We're having a game be $90 for a physical version, and 80 is already a step above, right? I think Mario Kart World being 70 digital and 80 physical would have been, and having people explain, like, listen, the cartridges are more expensive. I think it would have gone over better. But I'm curious to see the actual backlash here, and I think that will lead me to my feeling on whether Grand Theft Auto 6 will choose to join Nintendo and go ahead and bump the price up, or if they'll want to avoid the even slightly negative PR and just say, we're going to be $70 because we're going to sell enough over time and we're going to make enough microtransactions over time, which does introduce one thing. Do you think Mario Kart World has microtransactions?
Yes.
I'm unsure. I think that part of what they're going to do long run for this, and I think they've had this in their pocket just in case in case it gets any kind of real flair going after it. I think that their thing is going to be Mario Kart World is $80, but all updates, new tracks, new carts, new characters sometimes are free. I think that's what they're trying to do, to stick on, is that's in their back pocket. But I could be wrong.
I don't know if that's worth $10 to them.
I don't know. All right, so I think to kind of wrap all that into a nice little bow at the end, I think the only thing I really want to finish with is that I am incredibly curious to watch the next few years with this and see how it goes and see how well it works for Nintendo, or if they end up regretting this decision. I don't have any inclination as to whether it be one or the other. I could see this doing very well in spite of all this and everyone accepting it, or not. But I think it was a bold move to see someone do this. And to my point of context, I have long said that there are plenty of games I can see being reasonable to price at a certain price point, but I think I'd like to see that with games that actually cost more to make and have a budget that literally pushes you in that direction, and you can see that. And then the context of what games are worth raised because of that. I think if another game shows that games might be able to be worth $80 and then all follow suit after that, $80 for Mario Kart World is a lot easier to swallow than Mario Kart World being the initial testing point for $80. And I know that it's a game that can have thousands of hours for play for the right person. But even if you like Mario Kart, but all you really want to do is get it, buy it, put it in, race through every track once or twice, and then put it down, I don't see there being a very easy way to look at this and go, yeah, clearly it's worth $80. So it's a very personal thing, but I think it leaves certain people who enjoy playing games for different reasons out. And sometimes I look at a game and go, I can play through that once. And I don't know that my value rests in that just because you made it to be played over and over and over again. Not everybody wants that. And so kind of like your point with Apex allowing people and Marvel Snap allowing people to play for free because of the people who spend the more money. Pricing it this way means that the person who just wants 10 hours or 20 hours of Mario Kart World is having to pay significantly more just because you know that there are people that are going to be okay with it because they're going to pay they're going to play for 1,000 hours. And that's not the ideal situation. So
my biggest thought is, like, I'm surprised that it wasn't Metroid that cost $80. Not that it doesn't, but Metroid I looked at and I was like, I don't know that I would play that, but I see it as more worth $80 than I'd see Mario Kart.
Same.
Maybe that's because I don't like Mario Kart very much, but
and Metroid's also a bit more of like it's a lower performer for them IP wise. Like it does okay, but the reason they don't just pump out those games is because Metroid is not as big of an IP for them. Hell, Zelda wasn't until Breath of the Wild. Like it did okay, but it never just did insane in terms of sales. And then Breath of the Wild came out, and now Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdoms are like, okay, Zelda's a premier franchise for us now. And there's something to be said about that. Even though I don't like the direction they changed, how cool is it that a franchise that's been around for like 35 years, 30 years at that time, I guess, was able to just be like, hey, we just made the game that made us a 100% everyone knows us. You know, that's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
So, I guess quickly, do you want to answer the there's this thought process. So Rude Days ask over or under $499 on the new price of the Nintendo Switch 2. And I think that that's implying that look at what the tariffs are doing. But look, tariffs are a complicated conversation. I don't claim to know what's right or wrong about them. I will say that since they've been implemented in the US, I've always viewed it as this is a tactic for leveraging, because from everything I can tell, and I could be wrong, don't claim to be the expert on here, they all seem like retaliatory tariffs in the same amount that we were being tariffed. So if someone had a tariff on the United States for 27%, we put a tariff on their country for 27%. That way we can go, you remove the tariff on us, we remove it on you. It's a way to leverage us to be able to have better purchasing power and exporting power. That's what it seemed like to me, and it seems to be working, because if I'm not mistaken, I just saw news that a number of countries that have had tariffs, including the Nintendo Switch 2 being apparently shifted to being made in Vietnam and some other place in order to avoid the tariffs that China is going on. But then Vietnam got slapped with like a crazy 46 or 47% tariff, because apparently that's what they had on us. Well, from what I've seen, Vietnam joined as one of the many countries that have gone and said, we'll remove our tariff against you if you remove the tariff against us. So I don't think the tariffs played as much of a point on pricing here as I think some people want to point at, but it does matter. I think it's more supply chain issues and how bad semiconductors are just short right now. And a lot of that comes off the back of AI and GPUs. There's a GPU shortage going on right now as well. And that's because AI, people don't think about it, uses GPUs in order to do a lot of its processing at work, and definitely its visual and image works. That it's crazy if you actually look at how much GPUs they have to use to tie these things in tandem to get this processing. So I honestly don't think the price of the Switch is going to change. I don't think the tariffs are going to last long enough for any of... I'm in an industry where right now I'm seeing tariffs being leveraged, but none of them are price changes. They're all surcharges, because I think every company views them as temporary, and they don't want to change their price. Tariffs go away, and then they feel like they have to lower them back down. So they're instead choosing to put a percentage surcharge on everything that you buy from them. Makes sense. So I think when you look at all that, I see no reason to actually worry about the price of the Switch going up because of tariffs. I think the price will stay $450. And I don't think that... The only interesting thing I'd point out as Nintendo's past is that the 3DS was crazily priced. I don't know if you recall, the 3DS was $250 at launch. And the Vita came out at $250. And the 3DS was not doing good when the Vita came out. It was fine, but it wasn't selling well. It was their worst selling handheld so far. And that only changed when they suddenly were like, the 3DS costs $179, and we'll give you a bunch of free games if you already bought it. And so there's nothing to say that Nintendo won't notice that a price is being a factor in their thing not doing well and adjusting it. If anything, I could see this. I'm not saying I think it's going to happen, but if pressure is put on them due to bad performance upstart, I could see this going to $399. So I actually think the opposite direction would be the more likely thing if it's going to happen at all. But I think the most likely is it's going to sit exactly where it's at.
I can tell you for sure it's not going down, because did you see the comments Doug Bowser made today?
No, I didn't. What did he say?
He pulled a Don Matrick and said if it's too expensive, buy a Nintendo Switch one. Yeah,
stupid,
insane. Time is a flat circle, man.
We got Doug Bowser being a Don Matrick. What is the world that we live in?
We got Doug Bowser being Bowser. I don't know, man. Look,
well, you know what's worse? I'm actually going to play devil's advocate on that for a second. That is 100% true.
Yeah.
And since most of the games other than Mario Kart World, actually I think Bonanza is exclusive as well, but a lot of the games they showed are still cross-gen. So right now, if it's too much money for you, just buy a Switch 1. The question is the Switch 2 ever going to lower in price? Because the Switch 1 didn't, that I'm aware of.
Nintendo doesn't lower prices on their shit. So
they used to.
No.
That's the crazy thing. And PlayStation used to. Do you remember when the PlayStation 2 hit $99 and that shit sold like hotcakes? It was insane. And then do you remember the PS3? The PS3 went from being $600 to $129 at its absolute lowest when you bought the version that only had 12 gigs of flash memory and no hard drive, the Super Slim. Yeah.
Insane console to own, though.
So point being is that prices used to come down across a generation, and that doesn't happen. But also consoles are more powerful at the start of their generation in comparison to what PC's doing now than they were also, sort of.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag.
I don't know. I would be shocked if Nintendo raised the price. And quite frankly, I would be shocked if Nintendo lowers the price, because there's only two.
I would too, to be fair. I mean, if they announced $399, I'd be like, damn.
Raising the price would probably kill the Switch 2. And I don't know how much Nintendo cares, but lowering the price, if they're like, oh, we were examining the tariffs and look at that, we actually can lower the price because of the tariffs. That's just a win for Trump, and I don't know if they would do that. I don't know if they would just hand him the free W. I don't know that they care, but I don't know if they would hand him the free win. So, I mean, I'm not even going to entertain a discussion about politics on this show. So I have nothing to say about tariffs. But you can say as much as you want. I'm not interested.
Oh, no, I only said what I view it as. I don't. Yeah. I'll tell you, be the first person to tell you. I don't know a whole lot, but I'm also surprised at how much people don't. Like my wife does not claim to be political. So I think this is actually a good thing. But my wife looked at me yesterday because I was talking about tariffs because I'm dealing with them at work. And she's like, what is a tariff? And I thought, interesting.
Yeah.
But she literally stays away from it. She doesn't vote. She didn't care. She didn't do any of that. So I respect it. But I was like, I think that there's probably a lot of people who are looking at tariffs and claiming things. And everyone is motivated to parrot someone that they view to be more knowledgeable than them. But I think a lot of people don't really understand what tariffs are. And I don't think a lot of people even know that most of the tariffs, again, and if I'm wrong here, I'll happily wrong and I'll take the egg on the face. But like I said, most of the tariffs being like for like tariffs just seems so obvious. It doesn't seem like he's just putting tariffs for no reason. Whether you think it's a good idea or not doesn't matter. That's different. Yeah. You can think it's a bad idea, but it seems so obvious as to what it is. And I think the way that most companies are treating it as a temporary surcharge, I think just points that most people aren't actually worried about this being a long-term issue. And therefore, I don't think Nintendo considered it a long-term issue in something where they're going to change the price. If anything, $450 was so that they had a buffer already baked in case tariffs stick around.
Well, they also said that was not true.
Nintendo said that wasn't true. Mm-hmm. So look, and I didn't really think that was the case, but even more so tariffs don't matter. That has nothing to do with it. Nintendo is bullish because Switch did incredible, and I'm glad that it did for them because they were not doing too hot off of the Wii U. But I think that this is their Icarus moment, and now it's just a question of do their wax wings melt, or does the moon stay out for long enough for this to be fine?
Well, from what I was reading on Twitter, and it's Twitter, so take it with a grain of Path of Exile leaderboards, I guess. But from what I saw is that other countries have pre-orders up already, and it's sold out, so no one gives a shit.
Well, again, I think pre-orders, this is a lot like PlayStation. Some people thought maybe the PlayStation 5 was going to end up having problems. And at the end of the day, it can do really well out of the gate. It's about what it does long-term.
But the thing is,
never doubted that this would do well out of the gate. And a good example for that is that, just so you know, pre-orders were really good for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, even though at that time, everybody, analysts included, were like, this generation is going to fail. Gaming's going away. It's all mobile. Clearly that didn't happen.
Analysts were fucking stupid. And Michael Pachter's never been right in his life. Look, I don't know. Nintendo, I think I tweeted it and I hold to it. This is going to sell 100 million units and Mario Kart is going to sell 50 million units. It does not matter because it's with $70 games. People complain, they'll still buy the games. $80 games, people are going to complain, they're still going to buy the games because in the end,
you want to play it.
You want to play it.
If you have the money, you'll spend it.
It's the boycott Modern Warfare 2 Steam group again, all over again. Do you remember that where they had their? Nope. I'll find the picture at some point. I'll send it to you. It's a
Modern
Steam
Warfare
group.
2 in the 2000s.
The old ones.
Oh, okay,
one. Yeah. They didn't have dedicated servers, and there's a Steam group that was boycott Modern Warfare 2 until we get dedicated servers. And then there's a screenshot of that Steam group on launch day, and almost everyone in there is playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. None of this is real. And quite frankly, anything that I see, any conversation on Twitter that I see about this, I don't believe, because everyone who's talking about it has a blue check mark and they're just going for engagement. So you can either go I actually think $80 games are fine, and you can get your $15 from Elon Musk, or you can go, oh, Nintendo is evil, $80 is too much, and then you can get your $15 from Elon Musk. No, the conversations are no longer organic on social media, so
Well, and
I'll wait until I see what happens.
I'm going to be honest. I just think in general, culture shifting to immediacy and wanting to be part of everything, and prices not lowering. I think that now more than ever, there is less motivation to wait and hope for a change, and there's more motivation than ever to want to complain and make your voice heard so that they can hear what you wish it was. But then I think most people deal with something where they go, this is not how I like it, but I like it enough that I'm going to pay it regardless, right? And I use that with everything. Chipotle has gotten to a point where one burrito is like $17, and it was 5 years ago like $10 for a fucking burrito and a Mexican Coke that was $3. So you look at how those things come together, and at the end of the day, guess who still goes to Chipotle and buys one? Me. And of course, I'd prefer Chipotle to go down. And actually, what's worse is I asked of people at Chipotle one day when my burrito would hit like $15, I was like, this price just keeps going up like every 6 months. What the hell? And I was like, do they at least pay y'all more? And it was somebody who I knew had been there for like 2 years. And they were like, I haven't gotten a raise this entire time. And I was like, so great, I'm paying more and you're not even fucking getting paid more. Great, thanks. Nope. But everybody struggles with wanting to experience this unnecessary thing, but still wishing that they can at least express their preference to what it could have been and what it would have been.
Yeah.
Most people don't actually vote with their wallet. Most people speak out loud their grievances and then buy anyway because they still want the thing. And so in that sense, I am actually very inclined to agree with you. I think if this hurts them at all, it's a very small percentage. And I think that even if they lose 20% of the business that they had with Switch, this still puts them at a 100 million unit console. And then that's far from bad. So, whatever.
What's funny is like the only even inkling I have to buy this at launch is if they lower the price and do an ambassador program, I'd like to be in it. That's the only motivation I have to buy it right now.
Yeah, that'd be funny. My real motivation is, do I want to play Metroid Prime at 4K 60, which actually is happening on that game because of course it's a cross-gen game and the overhead's easy. But basically, do I want to play that at 60 frames per second? That's the real crux of it. Or do I want to play it at 30 frames per second on my OLED? And I'm a little worried that even on my Switch OLED, the game might stutter and not hit 30. So I am a little motivated. And as I've said, if Pokemon Z through A ends up being more like Legends Arceus and the things I liked about that, and it does well and it looks like something I want, I probably would want to play that with better graphics and whatnot and more stable. But at the same time, I'd have to see that it's actually that case. Game Freak gives me no reason to believe that just because it's on more powerful hardware, it'll actually be utilizing that extra power in any meaningful way.
It won't.
Yeah, I think it'll be, if it's buggy and fucked up, it'll be just as buggy and fucked up, but at a higher resolution and a higher frame rate. So it's just like, fuck it, what do you do?
Are you satisfied? Because I forgot to say something about Avowed that I've been waiting all week to tell you because I know it's going to make you mad.
Well, this is funny because there's a question that we have that I think is going to tie into something I wanted to know about Avowed from what I've seen.
Oh, okay, go for
First thing I want to do is, this is not a question. This is from Stinger X, one of our patrons. He says, can't think of a question currently. Just a comment. Keep doing what you do. Fist bump. And you know what?
Bam.
Yeah, John, fist bump. Thanks, bud. We appreciate you.
Bong.
But Jehudi MD is our last question of the show. And he says, do you seek game-related books to expand on game lore? And I don't think this happens in the same way as it did in like the early 2000s. Like Halo saw a lot of expansion. Some Gears had a little bit of books of expansion. And there are definitely others that do it. But a game like Avowed is interesting because one of the things that has me a little iffy on playing Avowed, but I don't think too crazy, is I've seen people playing gameplay of it and I've watched some of the conversations, And there are so many keywords that are colored for you to click on and dig deeper. And it seems like it really wants you to have some Pillars of Eternity lore, and that they are not shy about referencing a bunch of things that Pillars of Eternity set up. And the game may actually tell you what it is, but not organically through dialogue. You just have to go dig through and look at what these points of things that they're talking about are. Yeah. And so my question to you is, how much do you feel like that's impacted? Because I don't think you played Pillars of Eternity 1 or 2 either, or at least not enough for it to...
Not enough, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't beat them.
So how much do you feel like that's tampered with your fun with Avowed insofar as your ability to understand the story?
Not really at all.
Good.
What I will say is that I was telling Sean, he has played Eternity and Deadfire, that they do seem to reference a lot of Pillar stuff, and I really liked the lore. And he was like, he's not interested in the game, and he was like, it doesn't matter that I played them because this takes place so long after those games, as a way to basically be like, yeah, it's in the Pillars universe, but none of your choices mattered. So take it from someone who at least played 1 and 2, you know, who knows. But the only thing I wanted to say, and I've been waiting because I know you, and I feel like this is going to make you as mad as it made me. So I'm playing Avowed, and on my monitor, I have an ultra wide, like 2037, something like that. It's an ultra wide monitor. So in gameplay, it's ultra wide, but when you're in dialogue, it's 16:9.
Oh,
it's awful.
Why?
It's awful.
There's been some other games that do that, and I'm like, why even offer it? This is another example of that, is when games will allow you to play at 60 frames per second, like Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed Shadows actually looks kind of good, and it looks like the most likely I am to play an Assassin's Creed game. I haven't been sold on it yet, but cutscenes are locked to 30 frames per second, no matter what you do. And I think, why? Why would I want to play a game and then have you transition me? And I know that they're probably doing it with like a little black screen insert, like a little 2-second black screen before going to a cutscene, just so they can make sure that if you're playing at 60 frames per second, it's not so jarring as immediately watching 60 frames drop to 30.
Yeah.
But why do that? And it's the same thing.
I don't know.
Why even support ultra wide if you're not going to support it across the entire game?
It doesn't make sense because I didn't have ultra wide on for a lot of the time because I figured it just didn't work. So I was getting it in 16:9, and then I figured it out and I switched it. And then I was like, oh, I must have fucked up, and it went back. And then I went to the menu, and it was like, no, it's in ultra wide.
I'm not going to lie, this is also a reason why I prefer to play on TVs, because since 90% of games really are made with TVs in mind, you don't have to deal with any of that shit. You know how I would be pissed if I bought an ultra wide monitor and was like, I'm going to game so hard in this, and then I played a game and it supported it, and then suddenly it was like, oh, but we're not doing it right now. I would just be like, I'm wrong. I guess it's better than nothing, but it's why?
Well, and that's the thing, though. Like,
TC is so flexible. Is there a mod? Can I put a fucking mod to push the game in?
There's, I mean, the one thing for me is like, overall, I think I prefer a TV, but the PS5, every single game works in ultra wide. So, it's totally fine.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. All right, so I guess back to the question: have you ever sought out game-related books to expand on game lore?
Not really. I read a bunch of the Mass Effect books by Drew, I think Kaparshian, I think that's his name, something along those lines. So I read his books. I liked them. But honestly, most of the franchises that I'm passionate about haven't had a bunch of that. Sure. I don't know that there's a ton of Fallout books. Sure. But, I still haven't watched the Fallout show. So, like, I'm not a go watch or go expand the lore. Like, if I'm going to read a book, like, I'm probably not going to read the next Mass Effect book. I'm going to read the next Way of Kings book or something like that. Like, I'm going to read Sanderson or something along those lines. As pretentious as I just sounded, like, that's more likely what I'm going to do. If I'm going to choose to read, I'm not going to choose to read a video game. That's just how I am.
I think why some people like it is because it's a way to expand on lore without the constraints of having to worry about the mechanical driven aspects of a game. Like, when you write a game story, you still have to worry about those things. But
I'm not talking down to it. It's just not. I don't know. For me, it's like the games I'm playing are games, and then I want to look more into it. I don't want to have to know who Master Chief is to read a book. you know.
I think that's
And
fair,
if I'm
yeah.
going to be introduced to characters, I want them to be new characters, which is why like I love Way of Kings and I love like Joe Abercrombie and people like that who write their own stuff and who are fantastic. You know, Joe Abercrombie's, I love the first Blade series. It's fantastic. And then obviously, you know, I can't even think of what the actual series is called, but first book of the A Way of Kings is awesome. I think it's Stormlight Archives. Great books. Mistborn. All those books are fantastic. His whole universe is great. That's Sanderson, not Abercrombie. But I love that. And I'm not necessarily looking for that in games. But again, some of them have been good. The Mass Effect books were good. Some of the Halo books were pretty good that I did read. Because as a kid, I was way more into that. I thought it was way cooler as a kid. Now I'm an adult and I'm like, okay. Like, because here's the thing. A lot of the time, those books don't matter to the games. A lot of that stuff,
most of the games don't ever keep them as canon, or they don't reference them in any meaningful way. So it's cool because you get to feel like you have more lore, but it's not ever, you're not rewarded necessarily for that lore very often.
Honestly, the biggest thing that has turned me completely off on this stuff is the fact that they just snapped all the Star Wars books out of existence. Like, I couldn't imagine investing all of that time in, you know, extended lore for Star Wars. And then some guy just goes, none of that fucking matters. None of it's real.
Yeah. But you know, one of the great things about human ingenuity is that I think a lot of those people, a lot of the people don't even like the new direction that Star Wars has gone in. I'm one of those people. I don't like most of the new Star Wars stuff. I'm also not a diehard Star Wars fan. I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. I like Star Wars. I think it's cool. And I think a lot of the side stories have been well done. And some of the games have been cool and well done. And none of that matters. But that's okay, because one of the things I like about that is I think when IPs get big like that, it's kind of as long as there's not something immediately fighting it, you can kind of just choose your cutoff point. You can just be like, you know what my canon of Star Wars is? Everything up until episode 6. You can even, or 7. You can even include 7. You just be like, fuck it, yeah.
There's 7 Star Wars movies? I thought there was only Empire.
That's my... No, I'm kidding. We've always got to have room for Revenge of the Sith. There's just no way around it. Great movie. No.
Empire's the only good one.
My answer is real similar to yours. When I was a kid, I loved reading. And I think as it's weird. Me and my daughter were talking because I want her to read because I think reading is very good. It teaches you a lot of things. So does playing games and reading in games. Whenever I was young and games weren't voice acted as often. But when I was a kid, I really enjoyed reading. And as my responsibilities have grown, I read less and less. And I can be honest, I haven't read a book in 10 years. It's just a reality. Yeah. And I enjoy reading, but I find that most of the reading I do now is me like reading articles and like, I think scientific stuff's really interesting. So most of my reading is things that aren't fiction pieces that are long and have a through line. If I read anything that's like that, it's usually a short story, something I can finish within like 15 minutes. And I enjoy that kind of stuff. Actually, one of the things I have read that's not everyone else has read was your little brown paper bag story, which I like those. I like something where you can feel that through line go, but that's because I'm so constrained on time that it's hard for me to make time to read a book. You know, reading requires a lot of attention from you, and it requires as little distraction as you can get, and that's difficult for me. And so you know, a lot of what I do is like I said, reading for science stuff, but even for that stuff, I'm primarily listen to people essentially do long form talks about it. I love learning and I love lore. And sometimes I'll do like videos of people diving deep into the lore, also from books, sometimes on things like Drakengard or Nier. And those are great. And sometimes I like to do that. But at the same time, it's just, I don't ever seek it out. But I have a weird twist on this that I've always been curious about. I wonder how many people actually in games that have stuff like this go through their through the process of painstakingly reading all the books that people put inside of video games. So think of Skyrim. There are thousands of books in Skyrim, hundreds really. That's probably a little bit. So hundreds is probably more accurate. Like the Lusty Argonian Maid and all these things. Like I know the names of the books, right? The Real Bear Zaya, all these different things. Have you ever actually seen someone read the majority of those books?
Me, I read them all.
I'm proud of you. That was my curiosity.
But here's the thing: I didn't read them in game. There's an app, and I read them all there.
See, but that's my thing. It's like I don't know. I didn't know there was an app. My thought was, it was really weird to have these in a game, even though it's cool. Like from a role playing perspective, being able to open a book in world and flip through the pages as time passes around you, it's kind of cool.
It is cool,
but I don't know. It goes against what I'm trying to do in the game, if that makes sense.
Well, it's like how The Darkness 2, I can't remember what the movie is, but you can
To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird, there's that moment with your girlfriend. You can watch the whole movie.
Also, yeah. Is it The Darkness 2 or The Darkness?
I think it's 1 because his girlfriend's dead in 2. So
yeah, exactly. Also, The Darkness 2 slaps. What a fun game!
Such a good
gameplay
game.
wise, it's great. The Darkness 1's good. That's a series I wouldn't mind seeing remastered. Because what's weird is since then, I don't feel like there's really been a game that's played with light that much.
No.
And I've always thought like that barely even got scratched. You could totally pull that off. Like that's cool.
Well, ironically, there is a game that just came out that does it, but it's dead already. It's Midnight Murder Club. It
came
out and it's had like 100 concurrent players on Steam. So that's a
poor for them.
Brutal scene, but it looks really cool. Like I've heard good things about it. I was gonna pick it up because Sean was willing to play it, and you get the free passes. I'm like, I'm not buying a game that's going to be dead. There's 100 people playing this game on Steam. Like I can't
make that investment. But that's the problem with having so many games that are about having your time at all times. You know, it's you get a few is what it seems like. I always wish that my pessimism there would just be proven wrong often, but I feel like more often than not, games that come out just don't do well, even if they're good. It's just a thing of there's too much competition and you're trying to fight through too much stuff. So, I mean, that's true outside of that. I'm not going to act like that happens with indie games. There are good indie games that I know get buried. It's just the nature. And there is an irony to having indie games that are probably really good get buried while fucking My Name is Mayo makes a fucking remake which I oddly appreciate the stupidity of the joke of everybody's doing unnecessary remakes and remasters. Let's remaster. Let's re-Mayo. My Name is Mayo. But yeah, there's something to be said about people swarming towards My Name is Mayo so they can get an easy plat game, while this probably pretty good indie game is just getting surpassed because there's too much. There just is.
Next April Fool's Day, we should release an episode that's like a 3-hour story breakdown of My Name is Mayo, the whole trilogy. I think that would be funny.
Oh God, that means
like and subscribe if you would like that. You can play them on my account, and you don't even have to have the trophies on your account.
That's a good point. I legitimately have it as a point of pride that I don't have a My Name is Mayo plan.
They're not. I don't know how to explain it, but compared to some of the other shovelware trash I've seen people
there's
play,
worse. I am aware. I'm just saying.
It's got a good story. I like the story.
What I say is My Name is Mayo is like it's the game everyone knows by name.
It's the first one.
That is that. So
it was
therefore,
the first one. It was a pioneer. You can't take that away.
Actually, I'm
from
pretty
Hellman's.
sure
It's a pioneer.
I'm actually pretty sure the first one was the 1,000 puzzle plus whatever game that got delisted.
Well, it got exactly. They didn't do it right. They got in trouble. My Name is Mayo is the pioneer because they figured out how to do it without getting in trouble.
And staying, yeah. And they figured out how to do it where people would pay and play again for a remaster. Yeah, that's funny. So, all right. Thanks, guys, for the questions. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Would love to hear your feedback on what you think of the Nintendo Switch 2, its pricing, and what it means for games to break past this already pretty fresh $70 barrier into this new 80, 90 if you're going physical range. I'm super curious to see people's reactions to this long term. I know we're seeing short-term reaction right now, but once people are actually having to pull the trigger and spend the money, I'm curious what the long form is going to be. So let us hear it. Again, if you want to throw a shout out to us on Twitter at TriangleSQRD or at ChrisFigs_. Or like I said, hop into our Discord, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on podcast services, that link is down in the description below. We'd love to hear from you. There's a place where you can talk that in, or you can just hop in the general chat and talk to us about it. Not everybody follows the rules of what's supposed to be talked about where, but you know what? I don't care. We're talking about random crap. It's all good. So yeah, Chris, as always, I think we're going to round this show out by thanking our patrons who went over to patreon.com/Nartech and give us a little $1 per month. While the list is still manageable, we like to read those names out as a shout out. So without further ado, first and foremost, our newest patron, Mr. Ryan Goldner, Low Rate Nate, Duh Overlord, Spencer, Brandon Edwards, Alex, Barry Rogers, Stingray X, Matt Tubbs, Easton328, Bailey Robertson, Mark Schutz, Rude Days 93, Kevin Bacon Bits, Danny Villalobos, Jehudi MD, No Fate, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Matthew Green, and Sean Sanderud. Thanks to each and every one of you. We'll see you next time.